not previously been a long-time viewer of the show, if you've
Well,
been fed this by the algorithm.
they've been jonesing for some no justice action. Clearly,
Well, there you go. Well, if you are a new viewer, please make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And of course, as always, the content that both myself and indeed Kevin Logan on the other end, if you do not know who Kevin Logan is, please go and follow Kevin Logan.
oi
The
oi.
content cannot be as consistent as it is without the support of our wonderful viewers. If you would like to keep the content going, if you enjoy us shouting at the TV in spoken word better than you'd thought it, which essentially seems to be the reason people watch my show, and potentially yours too, Kevin, then you can support either of our channels by subscribing on Twitch for $4.99 or for free with Twitch Prime. There's 300 of you. Some of you must have Amazon Prime. If you link Amazon Prime to an account on Twitch, you can set it up in 5 minutes, and then you get access to a free subscription where you get all the sub benefits of being a Twitch sub, and it's free for you to get, and we get paid money from Jeff Bezos if you do use it. We're very much worth doing because it's free and it helps us both and gets you ad-free viewing and all the emotes on Twitch. You can drop bits on Twitch. You can super chat in YouTube. You can also become a member on both of our channels for just 99p, which is cheaper than a can of Red Stripe. And on top of that, you can gift memberships to the community on both Twitch and on YouTube, which spreads the love around, gives everyone access to all of those good little benefits.
True.
Again, it's only 99p to be a member on YouTube, and you get emotes that you can use both in YouTube chat and you can use it in your YouTube comment section, right? You can spam the vote green one all you want if you want to. On my one, you can use Kev's very cute cat emotes as well over on YouTube as well for just 99p. I see a lot of white names, new white names in chat. Do you want, if you would feel want to support the stream, or indeed you can do on Patreon. Both Kevin and I have Patreon as well. Mine's patreon.com/NoJusticeMTG. That helps us make content because both of us stream. You stream 6 days a week, don't you, Kev?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I stream 6 days a week too. Every little helps us to keep the content going, as this is both of our full-time jobs.
True. Anyway, having done that bit, are we going?
Yes. I'm gonna raid over into the Noisy Immigrant over on the YouTubes. Let's see who's live on Twitch.
I'm going with some random geek on YouTube. Say hello. Boom. And I'm going to go with Zacap on the Twitches.
Yeah, Zacap sounds like a good shout. Do you want to shout out your socials as well? Because there's lots of people watching.
Oh shit, I'll have to find out what the fuck they are. I'm at no. Oh shit, was it not KF Logan 1875 on Twitter? And I'm Kevin Logan KF Logan 1875 on Twitch. I also do sports watching alongs. KFL Reacts on both YouTube and Twitch if you're interested in that.
You doing? I'm looking forward to reacting to the Ashes later on this year with you.
Yeah, we'll do some Ashes in December. Yeah, be good stuff.
Definitely. Sick. Well, thank you everyone for joining in today, and we'll both be back tomorrow.
Indeed. Free Palestine.
From the river to the sea.
Bye.
See you next one. Bye.
Like getting done with all those things. Okay, so it's like, yeah, I don't care about like those things. And the milestones I can always like regularly do. Tomato Temple.
Comrades. Shanna Cranky Pants, mod extraordinaire, is lurking in the void. Watch out for the tardigrades, darling. And rejoice, comrades. Jim Speak is in the chat. Hi, Jim. Do we want to cover what Cleverly said? Since Kevin and Elena didn't, I think we actually covered because obviously I was going to say we need to know our enemy, but technically the enemy is now Faraj. Yeah. So let's go over to the iPlayer and cover Cleverly. Oh no. iPlayer. Yay! Rejoice, comrades. Sozzled Snake is here. Hi, Sozzled. Where is she? We do not need to cover.
They use fake names, carry burner phones, and hide.
Yep.
This morning, the Prime Minister, unpopular in the country, under pressure in his party. As Labour's conference begins here in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer joins us exclusively live. With me throughout the show, Alan Johnson, a Cabinet Minister under Blair and Brown, Belle Ribeiro Addy, Labour MP and prominent voice on the left of the party, and Gary Smith, boss of the Power indeed for now, because it is the Tories' turn.
No problem. Hydration is good. Hi, darling. How's the back? I was using ibuprofen gel earlier, so my back is feeling much better. And so is the hips. Mind you, the hips are never fully good, obviously, because arthritis sucks like that. But at least the ibuprofen gel is helping going down. Well, yep, got it down. Go to channel. Your channel. There we go. There is my YouTube. Wait. Work, you sinless bastard. There we go. There's my YouTube chat. And over to Twitch. Oh, Amy's live. Chat, please. Oh, motherfucker. Now, I've closed. Oh, Twitter just went live. Boom. Put the volume down. There we go. Volume down. Rejoice, comrades. Mobius is here. Hi, Mobius. How was Lefty tonight? May I assume he was covering the conference as well? I've also got a story to read after we've listened to what one of the most pointless politicians has got to say. It's James Cleverly, by the way. Right. Take it away, Laura, and James Cleverly, I guess.
They'll have their Turnout conference next week, and they are also under pressure from reform. And they also have a leader who not everyone in their ranks thinks is pulling them in the right direction. Well, James Cleverly is a familiar face to all of us, former Cabinet Minister under...
Is there any sections like that? He gives me permission, I can use his footage, his channel, if I feel I need to maybe expand on things and give it a more Scottish perspective. Obviously, our politics is slightly different than the rest of the UK for obvious reasons. Plus, we've got a decent government, a mostly decent government up here. At least better than fucking what Starmer and the rest of that cabinet are doing. Okay. James Cleverly, shall we?
Different Conservative administrations, who also had a run at the leadership himself, but he joins us this morning for the first time in his new job as Shadow Housing Secretary. Good morning to you, Mr Cleverly.
Good morning.
Keir Starmer told us the battle with reform is a battle for the soul of the nation. Do you see it in the same almost moral terms?
Well, Labour and Keir Starmer personally are now desperately trying to recover some credibility when it comes to national pride and patriotism. This is a party that...
Yeah, he does. He plays Warhammer. I like to think every now and again what faction. Yeah, he maybe the Dominion of Man, the Brotherhood, so that Space Marines. Tyranids? That made quite fun to think that his faction's the Tyranids. Massive space-eating insects. There's a joke somewhere in there, I believe. Yeah, I know it was a joke, so don't you worry. Oh God, yeah. Yeah, of course it's Mobius. I don't see Sweeney surviving until Holyrood. He's been a good caretaker, I guess, not like a placeholder. And with any look by the looks of it, Stephen Flynn's coming back home. Oh my God, Stephen Flynn as First Minister. Fuck, that would slap. And thank fuck Kate Forbes is actually stepping down. She's leaving. She's not running again. Bye, Kate. She's talked them on finance and stuff like that, but everything else, she's basically a Tory.
Mocked people who are flying the Cross of St George. He is a person who himself said all immigration law is racist. This is a party who voted 139 times against our attempts to strengthen the border, and who opposed me when I was Home Secretary, when I tightened up the rules about who could come and work here and live here in the UK. So this is a day late and a dollar short, and nobody is buying it. These are people, this is a party that has ridiculed the identity and institutions and heritage of this country, and suddenly, out of the blue,
you lot haven't?
The Labour Party does whenever it's in trouble, is trying to wrap itself up in the national flag. Nobody is buying it.
And yet, I'm asking about your party. Do you see the fight with reform in the same terms as Keir Starmer has framed it this morning? He suggested some of their policy is racist, and he's presenting it as a moral battle for the soul of the nation. Do you, as a senior Conservative, see it in those same terms?
Keir Starmer can describe his troubles and tribulations in his own language. My observation of reform is, as it's always been, that they are very, very good at headline grabbing, and you guys are very compliant when it comes to covering what they say. But very often, and we've seen this with their latest announcements, as soon as you look at any of the details, the policies fall apart. The deportation announcement, based on figures that were denounced by the authors of those figures within hours. No plan for delivery. So yes, good at grabbing the headlines, but governing is more than about grabbing the headlines. And that is why the Conservative Party under Kemi is making sure that when we make promises about securing our borders, about reducing taxation, about increasing defence, about securing our country, that those announcements will be underpinned with a delivery plan and the genuine hard work that you need to deliver policy, not just the here today, gone tomorrow headline grabbing announcements that we're seeing both from Labour, frankly, and from Reform.
Well, Reform have also proved quite good, not just at grabbing headlines, but it's grabbing plenty of your former.
And your party's never done that, James. Really. Examples in the chat, please, of, well, obviously, we know he's disingenuous. He's a fucking Tory.
Colleagues to go and join their ranks, because many of them, like Danny Kruger, look at what Reform has done and think, hang on a minute, they're the future, your party is the past. When it comes to things that have gone before in the Conservative Party, I just wonder, are you completely signed up to everything that Kemi Badenoch is now saying? Because not so long ago, you said we don't have to choose between a strong economy and protecting our environment, yet she has said she'd drop the target of net zero by 2050. So was she wrong, or have you changed your mind?
No, and actually, the point that I made, the speech where I made that suggestion, that point, I also set out how the British tech sector could be really successful by promoting renewable energy generation, large-scale battery storage, wind power. The point I was making is about not throwing out the baby.
Actual shadow cabinet and former cabinet members, when you were in government, disagree with you on that. You really should be nationalising energy production and doing more fucking tidal. Rejoice, comrades. James Holmes is here. Hi, James.
with the bathwater. Net
Good.
zero
And is that what
That's
is
she's
not.
doing? Because plenty
No.
of people have said
What?
if you get rid of net zero, that's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, but I don't agree with those people, and I don't think Kemi does either. What we're saying is the net zero commitment that was put in place before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, was put in before the turbulence we've seen in energy markets around the world, is not deliverable on the timescale that it was originally set.
Renewables can negate that, so we don't need to keep on buying foreign oil or playing with the idea of creating a new oil field in the North Sea and North Atlantic, well, North Sea, really, off the coast of Scotland. I don't want you to do that. I want you to fucking stop promoting fossil fuel use. Only one planet, James. So doing more onshore and offshore, and doing tidal. And what else can we be doing? We can maybe not charge us, the country that's producing the most renewable electricity, charging us more for putting it on the grid. That might help. Stop charging energy producers up here in Scotland. We produce 110% of the electricity we use by renewables. Stop charging us for putting it on the grid because we're too far away. That is a bullshit reason. It's because you're all cucked to fund fossil fuel companies. Stop doing that. We can actually do fully renewable here in the UK quite easily.
What Kemi is saying is that this Ed Miliband nonsense, which is dragging British industry to its knees, which is giving us higher energy prices than other European and global competitors, Ed Miliband is closing off domestic
More
energy generation
renewable.
just at a time when the country should be more energy independent. That is nonsense. That is what we are rejecting. What I was saying is that whilst swallowing that reality pill when it comes to the global energy mix, we should also ensure that we still invest in green energy generation, which is an export opportunity and will make our country money, mass battery storage capacity, which again, electric car technology, manufacturing, all these things can go in parallel. And the arguments that are made by some political parties, including Reform, which is you have to reject anything to do with non-hydrocarbon energy generation, is nonsense. And again, the Conservative Party, uniquely in the political landscape, is setting out a proper, balanced approach which protects our energy independence in the here and now, and also sees investment in technologies of the future.
I want to ask the new James Cleverly about something else the old James Cleverly used to say. He used to say leaving the European Convention on Human Rights wasn't something that would solve everything. If your leader announces, as we may expect, that the Conservatives would leave the European Convention on Human Rights, would that be the right thing to do? Will you have changed your mind on that as well?
No, it's
So
not
Laura,
nice.
if you're going to quote me, you need to actually quote me, not quote things I didn't say. What I've said, what Kemi has said, and what I believe Lord Wolfson is saying is that leaving the ECHR on its own is not a silver bullet. That was my quote. And the point that I've made is if we are going to do that, we've got to recognise that there have been a whole load of judicial decisions, which I regard as pretty activist decisions, which are perverse and completely at odds with what the British people.
Ooh, scary lefty lawyers and judges. Ooh. They're going against what the British people want. Fuck off. The reason they're doing this is because it's against legislation. And you try to change the legislation and it wouldn't go through the other place. Because oddly enough, there was actually decent people in the other place. Don't get me wrong, I still want to fucking get rid of it because it's highly undemocratic. Having a second chamber that is wholly unelected. And the people in the place get appointed by a government, a political party essentially. It sucks. But there are somewhat decent people in it. And some of them are for getting rid of the place that they work in, which is based. I like them.
Want. Dealing with that environment won't be solved just by leaving the ECHR, which is why Kemi's asked Lord Wolfson to look at a much broader set of questions about, can we deport people that should be deported? Can we protect our service personnel against lawfare? Can we ensure that our systems, particularly our legal and judicial systems, reflect the needs and wants of the country rather than the political appetites of a small number of decision makers in the judiciary? That is the question that is being asked.
Okay.
That is completely consistent with what I've always said.
Okay, James Cleverly, it's good to have you back with us on the show, and I suspect there'll be a vigorous debate about that particular issue at the Conservative Party conference next week. Thanks for being with us. And we will be there next week at the Conservative conference in Manchester. And James Cleverly's boss, Kemi Badenoch, will be with us then too. So stick it in your diary. Now for something completely different. As a young teenager, Greta Thunberg shot to fame with her campaign against climate change. Now in her 20s, she's on one of over 50 ships trying to get to Gaza to provide humanitarian aid. I spoke to her on her phone somewhere off the coast of Greece.
What we are trying to achieve is to show the mass mobilization for Palestine and to show that the people of the world stand with Palestine. We are sailing again with dozens of boats, the biggest ever fleet to try to break Israel's illegal and inhumane siege on Gaza by sea. We are doing everything from our side to maximize the chances of us achieving the mission. But of course, this is not only a humanitarian mission. We are carrying humanitarian aid, aiming to get that aid into Gaza and open up a people's humanitarian corridor. But we are also carrying hope and solidarity and to send a strong message to the people in Gaza that the world sees you and that when our governments fail to step up, the people will step up. We know that there's a genocide going on in Gaza. The UN Commission has now confirmed what Palestinians and human rights organizations have been saying for a very long time, that it is a genocide. And under international law, that means that states have a legal duty to act.
The international courts, though, are yet to reach a verdict on genocide, and Israel denies it. But in terms of your flotilla, there are dangers in the way that you are going about this. And
Yes, good luck, Greta, and the Sumud flotilla, Sumud Global Flotilla.
Indeed, the flotilla has become a target. There was a different proposal from the Italian government where you sent your aid to Cyprus, and then it was taken by the Catholic Church into Jerusalem. Why not pursue that route rather than carrying out this journey where you have been in great danger?
Almost every single time we have received those kinds of proposals. But we know that Israel is not acting in the favor of the Palestinian people, so why would we fall for that? Most of the things that we have been told have been lies. And what we are trying to do is not only to deliver humanitarian aid, if I can remind, we are trying to break the illegal siege. The people of Gaza have a right to decide what comes in and out of their territorial waters. Israel's siege is illegal. It should not exist.
Yeah.
But there have been videos shown of attacks on the flotilla. Some countries, Italy and Spain, have even sent naval ships to protect you. Would you like the UK government to do that? I mean, are you scared for your own safety there out at sea?
We have...
Us go and protect them.
Seen escalated attacks, yes, and we have seen escalated threats, baseless threats from Israeli officials that have no legal grounds and that would be a blatant violation of international humanitarian law and Geneva Conventions. But why would they target us? Why would they attack a peaceful humanitarian mission aiming to bring humanitarian aid to a starving population?
Is it frightening?
What is frightening is to live in a world where people seem to be able to accept that a live stream genocide is going on and not do anything about it.
There are, of course, many humanitarian organisations who are doing their very best to try to get aid into Gaza. governments around the world are trying to put pressure on Israel. You have been accused of this flotilla being something of a publicity stunt, trying to attract attention and taking risks to get publicity rather than a serious attempt to make a change to the situation. What do you say to that accusation?
First of all, I don't think anyone would risk their life for a publicity stunt. Second of all, if you think it's a publicity stunt, have you asked the people in Gaza if they consider this to be a publicity stunt? And I repeat, this mission should not have to exist. We do not want to be doing this, but we have to keep trying, right? If we just thought to ourselves, well, I'm just one person, I can't make a difference, then almost no one of us would have any rights by now.
So you're focused on campaigning for Gaza right now, but Donald Trump told the world at the United Nations this week, suggesting that climate change was a con and was a hoax. What did that make you feel? I mean, do you still have hope that your campaigning for so many years will actually make a difference when you hear the American president say that?
Honestly, I'm trying to think of a response to that, but I can't find any, to be honest. I don't think it's worthy of a response. The statements that some of the most powerful people in the world are making are nothing less but out of a parody. And we know their intentions. We know they are not listening to the most basic science. We know they are not complying by international law or any common sense whatsoever.
Well, Greta, it's been great to get your responses this morning, speaking to us from the middle of the sea. Thank you very much indeed for giving us your time during your journey, and thank you very much indeed.
Have a nice day. Take care.
Thank you, Greta.
Now then, back to our main focus here at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. The next 72 hours of this conference really is critical for the Prime Minister. This is what he told us about his government's mission.
I'm saying we have got the fight of our lives ahead of us, because we've got to take on reform, we've got to beat them. And so now is not the time for introspection or navel gazing. There is a fight that we are all in together, and every single...
They have been, Mobius. How's the gardening going? I keep on meaning to go back and check more of your videos. I will. I'll get there. Or we could maybe show them, to show people your channel. Get your numbers up. I'm up to over 500 watch hours on my YouTube. That cheers me up. It's amazing.
Single member of our party and our movement, actually everyone who cares about what this country is, whether they vote Labour or otherwise, it's the fight of our lives for who we are as a country.
He said, Bell, now is not the time, give me space, almost an appeal to backbenchers and other in the parties who have been publicly saying, some of them, he's maybe only got till May, things have to improve, he's got to sort himself out. Do you think that this morning will have settled anybody's nerves?
I think people are going to be looking at a change in direction. And, you know, as you said, we've got 72 hours. We've got time for a change in that direction. And whilst, yes, definitely there have been people talking about the individual, for a long time, a lot of us have just been talking about the policies.
Thank you, Mobius. Much appreciated.
We really need to change the finances of this country around. And in order to do that, we are going to have to invest in public services. But at the moment, we're cutting things, and it doesn't make any...
Oh, Belle, I love you. I'm glad you flung your hat in the ring for Deputy Party Leader. It just cheer me up. Your party and your government ain't going to be doing that. That much is evident, at least to me. And probably a lot of other people in both my community and Kev's and Helena's community and My Left Eyes community and Dating Mules and 27 Club, all of us are noticing this, and I don't think your party's going to be doing that while they're in power, unfortunately. I would suggest to you, if you disagree with the direction that here and Morgan McSweeney and Rachel Reeves and everyone, Paulo Piero, if you don't like the direction they're going, leave, become an independent, join the Greens, join your party if you like. I can see you actually voting against something which is good. You should be doing that, and you getting booted before getting removed from you. I'm surprised some of you are still left. literally, in the party at this point. I can see your whip getting removed at some point if they do something completely egregious. We'll wait and see what Rachel does in November. People like Trickett, people like Lavery, people like Bergen, I can see all of you losing the whip because you disagree with maybe more benefits bollocks that she might bring in, maybe increasing VAT, which I think is a distinct possibility. Thanks, Rachel. It's an indirect tax that usually hits the poorest, people like us. Rachel, don't do it. Don't increase VAT. I beg of you, just don't. You're already hated as it is, but if you raise VAT or get rid of the triple lock, you're fucked. Literally getting rid of the triple lock. Basically hitting the people that vote for you. Nice.
Any sense?
So you say a change in direction. What do you mean by that? Because actually this government has raised taxes and put tens of billions extra into the NHS. So what do you mean by a change of direction?
Well, at the moment, we are not going far enough on things. We do need to raise money. I think all of this Treasury orthodoxy is not going well for us. I think the idea that we would not look.
I think what she means by Treasury orthodoxy is the fiscal rules. Oi, Rachel, the fiscal rules fucking suck. They're self-imposed. You don't need to be doing them. Just saying.
To lift the two-child benefit cap. The idea that we would continue to spend money on things that frankly don't make sense to me. These nuclear jets I think we're spending money on. We continue to give private companies millions, billions of pounds to run our public services. All of these different things that are causing problems, in my view, in terms of us moving forward with investment in public services.
Alan, I mean, this is a traditional debate in the left party, the Labour Party, isn't it? You know, left v other bit of the not quite so left.
Heard it over and over again. But what Keir concentrated on was some of the successes so far. I was in Harold Wilson's old constituency, Huyton, on Friday night with the splendid MP.
And you wrote his biography, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm his biographer. But there were people there telling me in quite a depressed part of Liverpool. I don't like to use the term deprived because I don't think they are deprived. It's a wonderful, warm community. They were telling me at the
Hello everyone, especially UK comrades. What's things like on the ground for you? Mine's is marginally better, don't get me wrong, the area of Glasgow that I live in is very fucking deprived. This country is literally screaming out for capital investment. Literally, we've went through this since basically I was born, so the last 46 fucking years. Delightful. Fucking brilliant. Neoliberalism. Gotta love it. Great swaths of this country are literally deprived. And starving children and not funding the NHS properly, not building council houses, 1.5 million isn't enough. Just saying. We need to be building more council houses. We need to be nationalising shit like we have up here. Our water is publicly owned. It's in public hands. Thank fuck for that. We've got rid of peak rates on the rails. Fucking amazing. One of the best things this government's done. Baby boxes. One of the best performing NHSs in the entire country in the four nations. Cheaper bus fare. First group are bastards. The First Glasgow are meh. The bus fare here in Glasgow is more expensive, but lots of us have bus passes. Ah, it's called a national entitlement card. Look at the funny sticker. So funny. Look at it. Look at the grumpy looking cat.
difference that breakfast clubs have made, both in attendance and attainment to their kids. Annalise was telling me about the money she's getting from the £5 billion Pride of Place to do
But if that's all making
and the Hillsborough law that the Prime Minister.
But if that's making a difference, then why is your party getting absolutely pummeled in the polls?
Look.
Because it's not like a little local difficulty. This is month upon month upon month, as we heard from John Curtis, the worst crash in popularity ever for a new government.
Two things. We need some growth in the economy, and we need to stop illegal immigration into this country, which flourished when it's 3 times the level since I was Home Secretary, by the way. Under the Tories it happened. But it has to be dealt with. People quite rightly say these are people coming here illegally, and they're mainly young men of working age. We have to deal with that. I think the returns agreement actually is going to prosper and grow with France, and we can do something.
And just if we're going to get that growth in the economy, we need to invest in our public services. You agree?
What are we doing with the billions of pounds that Rachel Reeves raised? Why have you forgotten that, Belle? Since why she didn't...
I'm sorry, I haven't... no one's saying that we haven't done good things. No one's saying that we haven't...
kind of sound like that.
Because I'm criticising things that I believe that have gone wrong doesn't mean I don't agree we haven't... I talk about the good things all the time. I was asked about what's gone wrong, so I answered.
Let's just close, Gary, with a thought about Keir Starmer's leadership himself, though, because it is true that when you speak to people privately, there is a very, very deep level of concern in the Labour Party about not just the difficulties of the government, but about his style of leadership. What if it is him?
I don't think people in the country are interested in the machinations or in personalities. The Tories had a revolving...
Party is. Your party very much is interested
in... The Tories had a revolving door at number 10, it ended in disaster. I listened to James Cleverly today. They got this country in such a mess. That's why people are angry, they're poorer, much of our communities look broken, and it was because of them. That's what we've got to remember.
Labour are carrying on. They're literally doing the same as what the Scum did. Just saying, my God, a Scottish General Secretary of a union, never been. By the way, I said this in Kev's chat. I don't like Alan Johnson for many different reasons, but super happy, and some of his former work colleagues despise the man because in '96 they were on strike, paying conditions as usual, and he, as General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, primarily for like postmen, people who work for BT as well, are members of this union. He literally sold them down and said, "Don't strike." They were thinking of going on strike during the pressure, which is the time leading up to Christmas, so the festive rush and all that. Said, no. I can work with the government, and we can get all of this done. We can get all your points met. No, told them that they voted for something that was a slight increase in things of that nature, but he left the union. He stopped. Then, in short order, he became an MP. So he literally sold the posties and everyone else in the CW down the river to get a position in Westminster, and in short order became Home Secretary. So he got a cabinet position. So lots of posties and BT workers felt aggrieved, and rightly so, because he literally sold them down the river, said you shouldn't, don't try not to strike at Christmas. We'll get everything if we just say to ACAS, and we'll work with the management, and you can get everything met, and you don't need to go on strike. And they believed him. Hundreds of thousands of them believed him, and they got sold down the river by that bastard.
This government has been at the best when it's been bold, nationalising steel, investing in defence, bringing back tens of thousands of apprentices and jobs. Sizewell, thousands of jobs going to be built in the nuclear power station there. Be bold is my message. And to all the politicians, get focused on the day job, the job you were elected by the people of this country to do last year.
Is Keir Starmer be the leader by the next election?
Yes.
Belle?
Probably.
Ooh, probably. Gary?
I think so.
Okay, well, all three of you, thank you very much indeed for your time here this morning. It's going to be a busy old few days here in Liverpool. As the Prime Minister this morning tried to start the week off by showing that his leadership can count. There's nothing easy about this era for mainstream politicians, not the debt, not the demographics, not the distractions from new political forces trying to manipulate the old. By the end of Wednesday, will Labour have shone in the conference spotlight, or will more of the difficulties be on full display? We will see. Thank you to all of our guests this morning, and thank you most of all to you at home for watching. I'll be with Paddy O'Connell for Sunday's newscast very soon, and next week we'll be with the Conservatives at their conference in Manchester. So I look forward to seeing you then, same time, but different place.
That's covered. And let's go for a more Scottish figure. It's called the Sunday Spot Kings along. Let's see what Labour will look like. Bye, Laura. I can type, honestly. There we go. On the show.
Sir Keir Starmer wants to renew Britain, but some in his party want to renew him. I'll be asking Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar if he's one of them. I'm Laura McKeever. Welcome to The Sunday Show.
Hi, Laura. There's Martin Preisler. It's the old landlord.
Hello and good morning. What exactly has Sir Keir Starmer managed to achieve in the 14 months since he led Labour to power with a massive majority? Well, that's a question that many in his own party are now asking. And after a credible leadership challenger appears to have emerged this week in the form of Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, if the PM can't turn things around soon, will he be gone before the next general election? Well, long before that, of course, Scottish Labour faces next year's Holyrood elections. And I'll be speaking to their leader, Anas Sarwar, shortly. First, though, our political correspondent, Lindsay Buse, is here. Morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
Prime Minister's been on Laura Kuenssberg on BBC One Scotland this morning. What did he have to say?
Yeah, he's coming into this conference, isn't he, after what has been a period of turmoil for him and for the government over a number of policy decisions they've taken, but also more recently losing Angela Rayner as his Deputy Prime Minister, having to lose Peter Mandelson as well as ambassador to the US. And then these comments.
They got told about Mandelson. It's on the public record, literally in the newspapers, what he was like. And he still went ahead and hired him as our ambassador. Seriously, get wrecked. You knew full well what this man was actually like and what his reputation was within the political sphere. So no, fuck yes, get wrecked. It serves you right for hiring him. You knew exactly what he was like, but you still listened to Morgan McSweeney and brought him back in. So that's 3 for 3, him getting fired and essentially hired. He says he quit. No, he didn't. Well, this time he literally did get fired. Still in the other place, still a lord. He's a life peer, so he's in there until he. So he knew exactly what he was like. Get wrecked, Starmer. You hired him knowing full well what he was like. These Blairites, what the fuck?
coming from Andy Burnham about MPs asking him if he would plump for the leadership in just the days before this conference takes place. He was asked about that this morning, and he was quite dismissive, I thought, Laura, saying that this was bread and butter stuff that all leaders of political parties have to deal with, have to take in their stride, particularly during conference season. Perhaps a little bit too dismissive, because this is a Prime Minister who won that majority last year, big mandate to govern, with his leadership already being questioned within his own party. And I do wonder if it's wise for Sir Keir Starmer to...
Give me a second, I will find out. Minimize your bit. You up for a second. Sorry if there's reverb on this. I shouldn't be too long doing this. Voter turnout, 2024 general election. .6%, well short of half the fucking country voted for them to become party of power. Ah! And turnout in gen. Okay. Oh, whoops. Not down. I can't remember what the turnout was here. I will tell you momentarily. Give me a minute. If anyone else in the UK would like to know what the turnout was in their constituency, just put it in the chat and I will check. My turnout was probably dog shit. It usually is. Oh no. Oh no, that's how much percentage. That's a little bit better actually. So voter turnout here in Glasgow North East, 47.1. It has been down in the 20s, which is dog shit. It usually hovers between 35 and 40%. So 47.1% turnout last year. It's not bad. 2019. What? 56.7. Yeah, I'll get that. 2019, 55.5%. 2017, 53%. That's actually went up a bit. Oh, 2015, this is when we voted in Anne McLaughlin for the SNP. 56.8% turnout. 2010, 49% turnout. Oh, fuck. 2009, that's a by-election. Notoriously low, usually. 33.2% turnout for that by-election, where we got, oh, rejoice, Willie Bain. This is what we had when Michael Martin, who was the speaker at the time, 45% turnout, no, 45.8, 49, fuck it all. So 49% turnout in 2005. Oh, and before that was a different seat. 45.8 is dog shit.
Sound quite so dismissive about some of the concerns that are being raised about his leadership.
And before even arriving in Liverpool, he was talking about reform as well, using some quite strong language around that, talking about a fight. What more did he have to say about reform this morning?
Yeah, he is really trying to cast this battle between Labour and Reform UK, as he would see it, already looking ahead to the next general election, saying that Reform UK is unpatriotic, that it wants to tear the country apart. This morning he talked about their policy on immigration. They want to scrap the indefinite leave to remain and eject people who are working legally in this country, migrants working legally in this country. He said that that was a racist policy that he could not support, and he talked about the next election, or the battle with Reform UK, being one for the soul, the identity of this country. So really coming out very strongly on that. I think we're going to hear a lot more of that as the conference progresses.
And of course that general election is a long time away. The Holyrood elections are not. So where does this leave Scottish Labour?
Yeah, well, it leaves Scottish Labour in, I think, quite a difficult situation, because they really want to be talking about the SNP's record in government. That's what they want to fight that Holyrood election on. And you're going to hear from Anas Sarwar in his conference speech today a lot on that. What is frustrating for people within Scottish Labour is questions about the UK government's record, about UK Labour's performance in the polls, about Sir Keir Starmer's leadership, and whether that hinders or helps them in that election. That is something they don't really want to talk about. I was struck, though, last week by Anas Sarwar when he was asked, when I asked him at Parliament last week if he had full confidence in the Prime Minister. He didn't directly answer that question, Laura. Instead, he talked about one of his frustrations and criticisms of the government being around what they have achieved, but not being able to actually tell enough people about those achievements. That's clearly something he wants to see a lot more of.
OK, Lindsay Bewes, thank you very much for now. And we can speak to Scottish Labour's leader, Anas Sarwar, who is at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool for us. A very good...
Hi, Puppet. How's it going? Let's hear what Anas has to say.
Good morning to you, and thank you very much
Laura.
for joining us on the Sunday
My
show.
pleasure.
Let's just
pleasure.
dive straight into that question. Do you have confidence in Sir Keir Starmer?
Look, absolutely. What I said to Lindsay last week was that it's frankly a ridiculous question to be asked about a man who just 15 months ago got rid of a rotten Tory government that was doing so much damage to our... Because look what Keir Starmer did. He lifted the Labour Party up from the ground. He got rid of the Tories that were doing so much damage to our country. He won an absolute landslide, and he is getting on with the job of clearing the mess left by the Tories and improving our country for the better.
And yet 14 months in, there are open questions about his leadership. Andy Burnham has done interviews talking about it. He says he's been approached by Labour MPs, trade union people as well, talking about this. Is that normal, 14 months after a landslide victory, to have people questioning your leadership?
Look, people are going to want to ask questions about leadership. I'm only interested in asking a question about one leadership, one office, and one occupant of a key address, and that is the First Minister and the occupant of Bute House. Because if you want to see a change of circumstances in your day-to-day lives in Scotland, we have to change this SNP government and go in a new direction. This is an SNP government that's in charge of our NHS. We have record-long waiting lists. They're in charge of our schools. They're falling down the international league tables. They're in charge of justice and policing, and neighbourhood policing has almost gone.
Loch Grant has been worse because of the fucking Tories and your Chancellor down here, down in England, down in Westminster. Yes, told us to leave. There's the door, you can use it. And guess what? We fucking used the door. So get wrecked.
Honest shoplifting feels like it has been legalised, and local service is being cut every single day. So if you want to see a meaningful change in your...
The council tax hasn't went up as much here. You never mentioned that. We pay a lower percentage of council tax. Don't get me wrong, we should be, people who have more expensive properties should be paying a little bit more council tax. But we can't do that.
Your day-to-day life, the best way of doing that is getting rid of the SNP and taking a new direction with Scottish Labour next year.
OK, but your party here in Scotland are polling behind the SNP at the moment, despite them being in government for 18 years and the shortcomings that you have just raised. So why is that? What do you think is going on there?
I've been written off so many times in the last 4 years. I was written off before the last general election. We won the general election in Scotland and we won a landslide over the SNP.
Yeah, in Westminster, not up here. Just saying. I'm deeply upset that great swaths of my country have actually went back to Labour, even though I've been telling them in the local area and family members of my peers and other people, don't fucking trust them. We know exactly what they're like. Just look in the past, what it was like. We were literally forgotten by most of our Labour MPs 3 years when we voted in an SNP MP and majority SNP government here in Scotland. Things started getting better. It will not get better under you being First Minister. I sincerely believe that. I do not want you to get into Butte House for many, many different fucking reasons. For a main reason, you're a fucking puppet. You'd probably scrap no student fees. You'd bring them here or bring them back. No, I don't know. I don't want you as First Minister, and by the looks of it, the polling, you're either third or fourth. SNP are in the lead, with Reform second, even though they don't have any. That might have changed. I'll check after this.
I was written off in the Hamilton Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election. Many people saying we're going to come third. We beat the Reform and we beat the SNP.
It wasn't a comfortable victory, though, was it? It was 602 votes in Hamilton.
Well, the point I'm making, Laura, is we have proven the pollsters and the pundits wrong time and time again, and we're going to do it again next year.
Okay, so you're not remotely worried about your standing in the polls at the moment, which show you behind the
Pull the other one, there's bells on it, and that's fucking hell. You think you're going to win? Your polling is shite, man. Going to be the government. They make me laugh, fucking hell. Don't get me wrong, I don't want Reform either. Thankfully, we've got a better voting system up here for Holyrood. I'm generally worried for certain constituencies in Scotland that Reform might actually win them. Still not enough. There's like 5 or 6 constituencies that worry me. One including Stephen Flynn's equivalent up here for Holyrood, which is he's Aberdeen's South for SNP in Westminster. So that Aberdeenshire area and parts of the Borders, which is majority Tory, the polling for them down there in the Scottish Borders, fucking hell, that does cheer me up. But fucking hell, you think you're going to win? You're third behind Reform, and they don't even have a distinct party structure up here yet, as far as I'm aware. I will need to check that. I'll get back to everyone on that. I'm going to have to do some research on that. It's probably going to take me a few hours. Damn it. So watch this space. I'll get back to you on the actual current structures that they've got up here. Well, they've got a party office and stuff. They're well established here in Scotland, obviously, for reasons. But you're polling behind Reform, Annas, you fucking lunatic. To think you're going to be the party of government up here.
SNP and with Reform very close behind you in Scotland.
Well, look, of course I want to use my energy, do hard work and demonstrate hope to our nation so we can take that new direction. That's going to require hard work. My biggest critics can't accuse me of not doing hard work, so I'm going to do everything I can to replace this SNP government in 7 months' time.
OK, you wanted to talk about Scotland, but you do have a UK leader. Will he be coming to Scotland to campaign alongside you ahead of the Holyrood elections?
Well, of course, Keir Starmer will play his part in the election campaign in Scotland and Wales and in...
She asked you if he was going to come up. I would say to him, maybe don't, my dude. It's hated up here. So I don't think that might be a boon for you to actually get the Prime Minister up here in Scotland. Most of us fucking despise him. We've got the two two-child cap mitigated by the Scottish Government. You never seem to mention that, do you, Anas? We are not starving children up here. Your party leader and Prime Minister is. And that fucking bull now in Caxton House. Fucking amazing. Trust me on this. Pat McFadden is in no way fucking Scottish. I don't see him as he might sound Scottish. He's from here in Glasgow, which is fucking odd. The two-child cap is mitigated up here, which is a good thing. That's something the SNP have done. But if you're in charge, you'd probably get rid of it and starve children. Delightful. You cannot blame someone for the fact of their existence. That is truly fucking scummy. Christ knows what you lot would do with the NHS up here in Scotland. I do not want an influence from Wes up here. Trust me, I hate him as well. I don't want him to be in charge of the NHS and social care. I really don't. And with you in power in Bute House and your other bastards, whoever you would pick for your cabinet up here, he would have influence on whoever we choose as health and social care up here if you were in power. I don't want Wes Streeting anywhere near my NHS up here. I don't. He can fuck off. I don't want you in charge up here for many, many reasons. So no. I hope you personally get booted off the list. I'm not sure about that. He probably will end up being on the list. But Jackie Bailey, they're polling for her constituency. They're polling for her actual constituency in her own seat. We will find out. Don't you worry. I would love to be able to campaign in her seat with the Scottish Greens. I would, but primarily I would be wanting to campaign here in parts of North Glasgow, which are easier for me to get to. Obviously, but getting out to where her seat is, Dumbarton, I can get to it no problem. We can get buses and shit here, and a train. So maybe getting rid of you and Jackie might be quite fun. I'd really love to see that happen. I would.
Many parts of England where there are elections.
Will he be an asset to you?
Well, the Scottish election is going to be led by me. I'm the candidate for First Minister, not Keir Starmer. Next year, the choice is a third decade of the SNP with John Swinney in charge, or a new direction with Scottish Labour and me as First Minister. Next year, you can't change the UK government. You can't change. Of course.
Thank you.
Of course, but the best thing the Prime Minister can do is get on with the work and improve people's circumstances across the whole country. And let's look at some of those achievements, because we don't talk about them enough. Glasgow shipbuilding. It was my first ever political campaign. In 15 months, this Labour government has secured the largest export deal in the history of shipbuilding in the UK, meaning we've guaranteed jobs for 15 years and secured 2,000 jobs on the Clyde. The average mortgage in this country is £1,500 cheaper because of the economic stability delivered by a Labour government. The average wage is £1,800 higher since we had a Labour government because of the decisions it's made around the living wage and getting growth into our economy.
Okay, well, many people...
And look what the difference are making in England that we sadly aren't getting in Scotland, because the SNP are wasting our money.
Better performing NHS, not starving children, publicly owned fucking water. Better investment in NHS Scotland. How can you improve that? The reason we've got better pay, the public pay, people who actually work for the government and other municipal bodies, essentially councils, the actual Scottish executive or the Scottish the mandarins behind it, essentially, not the actual politicians like Anas. We give them the living wage, not the national living wage, which is £12.21 an hour, which is crap in my opinion. We actually pay our civil servants better up here than we do for the lower class. They do down in England, by the way. People who work in Whitehall, they get better pay up here. No Airbnb in Edinburgh. They're banned, they're not allowed. And there's other councils are thinking of introducing that as well to stop rents getting artificially increased by the fact that Airbnb properties exist. Less actual private landlords and more council houses. My home city still has actual council housing. My sister's in the council house. Obviously, there's the social housing here in our rent. I was having a discussion. You can think of it as a discussion with Super Hubby. Our rent is only 188 a month, one of the lowest in the fucking country for social housing. We've managed to finally get the housing association to fix the damp in our place, fix the floorboards. Rejoice! My flat is actually quite decent now. I struggle with the bath. It's high-sided and it's narrower. Getting out of the bath, I bashed my wrist on the derriere. Ouch. We've got better public services up here. How are you going to improve on that, Anas? I'm not sure. As long as you don't touch them, fine. If you can improve in other areas, I suppose you have that possibility to do that, but I don't trust you. I don't think you would. I think you would get dictated to by the Politburo done in Westminster. I really do. I think you would do that.
And are demonstrating incompetence. £5.2 billion of additional money since Labour came to power for the SNP Scottish Government. What have we got to show for it? Where has the money gone?
Okay,
why aren't we seeing the benefits in our NHS? Why aren't we seeing the benefits in education?
Let's talk about the cost of living, because shipbuilding jobs, of course, will be welcome, especially in Glasgow. But contracts for shipbuilding jobs don't help the fact that the energy price cap is going up by 2% next week in October, that inflation is currently sitting at 3.8%, fueled by high food prices. Do you really think people feel like they are better off right now?
Well, look, there are still a challenge around the cost of living crisis. There is still much more work to be done to bring down energy bills, but you can't ignore the fact that the average mortgage is £1,500 cheaper and the average wage is £18 higher.
Many people will just be feeling the fact that their mortgage interest rate is now at 4 or so percent when it used to be below 2%. Do you think people are really feeling the benefit of that right now?
I'm sorry, Laura. This UK Labour government has demonstrated economic stability, seeing 5 interest rates cuts, which is why the average mortgage has come down by £1,500. Do I want it to go even further? Of course I do, but we can't ignore the progress. Do we think that we can fix every problem and every mess left by the Tories in 15 months? No, we can't. But what I'm not going to allow the SNP to do is pretend that all the faults that we have in our country are going to be the fault of what's going to be at that time a Labour government that's in for 20 months, and they want to ignore their record of 20 years.
Okay,
under the SNP,
let's talk about the messaging
on an
if we
NHS
can.
waiting list.
Let's talk about the messaging. This is what you are trying to put across. Why do you think that the voters and the polls are suggesting that they are not buying into what you are saying right now, that they will still go and vote SNP? That is the intentions that are being suggested in polling at the moment. Why do you think that is?
We won the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election. In the Barrhead by-election...
Like a fucking broken... Yes, right, we get it. You fucking won. Well done. Round of applause. Yay, you fucking won that one seat in the by-election. Fucking good for you, I guess. Fuck it. That is one little constituency, one constituency essentially, not an entire fucking nation. There is a slight difference between one constituency for Westminster than an entire country that has a government of its own to provide and make our lives, the lives of Scottish people, better. Stop banging on about the fucking by-elections. Seriously, it's getting on our tits. Well done, you won. Move on.
We doubled our vote. The SNP
I'm keen to know why you think that might be. You're talking about their records, and yet people are still saying that they intend to vote for them. Why do you think that is?
No, Laura, again, you're talking about opinion polls. I'm talking about people actually voting. When people are asked to actually vote and the choice is put in front of them between a third decade of the SNP with John Swinney in charge and a new direction with Scottish Labour and me as First Minister.
What you said got directly contradicted during the same campaigning last summer by the now Prime Minister. He made you look like an absolute fucking lunatic, an absolute moron, essentially. That's why the polls are looking quite good for SNP, don't get me wrong. There is problems within the SNP and with certain things that they have to do and mitigate up here in Scotland for us because of the actions of your party down in Westminster. Oh. We are not believing you. Lots of us, including myself, I'll speak for myself. I don't believe you. I don't trust you. You seem like a fucking puppet to me. I do not want you as my First Minister. And I can actually help change that. I can make sure that you don't become First Minister. I can I can campaign for the Scottish Greens, which I will be doing, the health permitting, of course. I like the SNP. Lots of their policies appeal to me and appeal to people who are the SNP members. We don't trust you, and you've been made to look like a cuck, essentially, to the Westminster, the Politburo down in Westminster and down in Number 10. I hope you stay in, so don't get me wrong. I hate the fact that Reform are second. Just what the fuck, Scotland? Don't trust Mad Frog and his band of merry fucking lunatics. And we don't trust you either.
I am confident we'll win that argument and win that election.
Do you not think people feel let down, though, by certain things, certain U-turns, for example, over winter fuel payments? There was so much anger around that. The decision about national insurance contributions as well, which have put pressure on employers. There's lots of things that this Labour government have done that have left people unhappy. Surely you have to acknowledge that.
Well, look, I disagreed with the decision on the winter fuel payment. It's why we said we would have done something different in Scotland, and we made that clear right from the outset.
I don't believe you. I think you'll get pressured by the Westminster government and by the Politburo down there. I think you'll sell the interest of us if you become First Minister. I don't want you to. I don't believe anything you say. And we have proof, we have receipts. You were literally contradicted by our now Prime Minister during the campaigning. I think you would be a fucking puppet for them and make the lives of the Scottish people materially worse. So no.
Glad the UK Labour government has reversed that decision on the winter fuel payment. I'm glad the SNP government's also reversed their decision because it's now a devolved benefit on the winter fuel payment. But what I'm more interested in is how do we get a benefit in people's day-to-day lives in Scotland? All those areas.
So how will you do that? Do you want to see the two-child cap lifted, for example, on benefits?
Well, my view on the two-child benefit cap is also known. I think it's a heinous policy that has to be removed. But the sums have to add up. But the sums have to add up. So if the sums add up, then I hope there is progress. But that's going to rely on
if the sums add up, which means if you think that the sums don't add up, you'll get rid of the mitigation of the two-child cap and start starving children again. Delightful. I'm glad it's mitigated up here because punishing people for their existence, something that is out with their control. We are never asked to be born. It is a good thing that has been mitigated up here. Amazing. But we think that you would get overruled and say you have to implement this or you'll get punished financially from the Westminster government. No. I'm glad it's been mitigated. And the fact that you say if the sums add up, It shows that if you had the opportunity or get told to do it by Westminster, you'd fucking do it and bring back in the two-child cap, which is scummy. Starving children, fucking bastards.
The sum's adding up. That is the grown-up approach to take. But again, Laura, you are falling into the
Adults in the room. Adults in the room.
trap of saying that every single problem facing Scots is the responsibility of a UK government and nothing to do with an SNP government.
I'm just putting
Our
to you.
NHS,
I'm just
our
putting
schools,
to you what the
our
polls are
colleges,
suggesting
our
at the moment.
universities, our policing, our local government, housing.
Oh, there's another one. They'd probably bring in student fees. One of the best things that has ever happened here in Scotland that we don't need to pay student fees. I didn't need to pay student fees. Fucking amazing. Love it. You shouldn't be charging people for going to university to do, and especially in certain areas of STEM. In my area, my discipline, virology and parasitology, charging people to become doctors, charging people to become nurses, physiotherapists, radiographers. Anything that a country needs, charging people to become like engineers, especially renewable engineers and people like that, and civic planning, public policy. We shouldn't be charging people for things that actually help run a country. Just saying. My sister didn't need pay student fees when she'd done her nursing degree. Through that, thank you, Jim. Correct. I am pretty sure you would implement them. You would bring in student fees up here. Fuck off. People like me fucking rejoiced for the fact that we didn't need to pay student fees to do what I see as vital things to actually run a country, make it better for the people of the citizens of said country. Charging nurses, charging students to become nurses and doctors and GPs and other things connected, like people getting charged to become engineers or architects. It makes no sense to me. We need these people to work in the NHS, to work in civil engineering, to work in civil policy. Shouldn't be charging these people. No, stupid, regressive. I do not trust you. I think you would bring it in here. And I don't want that. I don't want to charge students for becoming doctors and nurses. Thanks. Fuck off. God, I hate them. I fucking hate them. Because of the way our voting system works, I think he'll probably end up staying on the list. Depending on what other people are in the list system, especially for here in Glasgow, considering how they redone the boundaries for the general election last year. That's why my constituency made no fucking sense to me. Me and my sister both have the same MP now, when it used to be two. It's one now. The eastern edge of the boundary for my constituency is just fucking stupid. It was to bring in more Labour voters, by the way. Funny that. Thanks, Boundary Commission. You're bastards. And it's stupid. It fucking is. To see the boundaries, feel free to check it out. Glasgow North East, Westminster constituency. It's fucking weird. It looks like one of those really stupid ones from the States with the congressional boundaries. They just fucking hell, some of them are mental. So my one just looks, what the... I remember talking to my sister about it last year, just before the election. Like, what do you think? I think it's stupid. These have been SNP since about 2010. Well, yeah, they've always been second, and since 2015 election, yeah, it's been solidly SNP for our seat. And yours have been huge Labour contingent in your area where you live. So what do you think? I think the constituency looks fucking odd now. So me and my sister agree. She's still a Labour Party member. She's not down in Liverpool, by the way, for reasons I'm not going to go into. And she says, no, it looks odd, to say the least. She was more worried for the other end of her getting an SNP MP, and I was more worried for the other way, getting a Labour MP. And look, rejoice, Labour MP, fucking amazing. I really don't know why we went back to Labour. Fuck. Glasgow, North East. Why didn't you fucking listen to me? I talked to lots of people in my local area, and when I went into the city centre, to people who actually lived in the further edge one, the east of me. Well, to the east is over in that direction. That's west. North, south, east, behind me. The boundaries. I'll bring it up after this, actually.
All the
Show you
responsibility
what it
of the
looks like.
SNP, and they're failing on each and every single one of those issues. And that's why I'm confident we'll win the election next year.
But I'm still yet to hear from you why you think that is, that people will still see that.
Pull the other one. There's bells on it. I really don't want you to be my First Minister, Anas. I really don't. And with any luck, he fucking won't be. He's on my list. He's one of the list MSPs for my seat, for my list. The section, the part of Glasgow which has him on it. So he's one of the list MSPs for my area. Not the north part. He's in the southern part of this list area, the other side of the river. So Pollokshaws and Shawlands and Shields and stuff. So he's south of me in that way.
That they're going to vote for them.
But Laura, again,
is this about messaging? Are Labour not communicating properly?
Well, whenever there has been an actual choice and people have had to vote, and we have...
You may notice a slight difference. Our reporters and journalists up here in Scotland, slightly better BBC ones, I guess, just a little bit better than what they have to deal with the lobby journalists in Westminster. They're a little bit better. They do actually ask them fucking questions. Obviously, Anas won't fucking answer them correctly or truthfully. I can speak honestly. Slightly better. The ones for STV, quite a lot better than the BBC Scotland reporters and journalists and stuff. Plus, we've got a lot more independent journalists up here in Scotland, especially here in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Tell me that.
made our argument, we have won those elections. We won the general election last year. We won the Hamilton Larkhall Stonehouse by-election.
Right, we get it. You won the fucking by-election. Fucking move on. Infuriating, isn't it, chat? Anas, fuck off.
In council by-elections across the country, and I'm confident once we get into the debates and the arguments for the Scottish election next year, we'll win too.
Okay,
right
what will
now,
your
people
arguments
aren't thinking about the Scottish election. What they'll be thinking about next year is who the First Minister is and who the Scottish Government is.
What will your policy approach be then, ahead of Holyrood?
We're going to fix the NHS, clear the backlogs, end the ATM rush for the GP. We're going to bring back community policing.
I get to see my GP if I call for an appointment within a week. It's usually 3 or 4 days, actually. So we get our appointments slightly quicker. It's brilliant. I fucking love it. And for certain specialties, because this is the mess of a human here, I'm usually only waiting about a month to go and see my specialists, like my endocrinologist, my gynecologist, my physiotherapist. Who else did I see? My rheumatologist, endocrinologist, physio, hematologist, and cardiopulmonary expert as well. I got obviously got to Kidney Hospital for the blood clots and shit like that. I was only waiting a fortnight to go and see my hematologist. I basically, in the same sort of week, the space of like 8 days, 9 days, I saw my hematologist, then my endocrinologist. That was basically a week after getting out of the hospital for the blood clots. I didn't have to wait. I'm an individual case, obviously. And my experience for NHS Scotland is fucking amazing. I've never had to wait that long. Physio slightly longer because it's busier. Obviously, lots more people go and see the physio. They have to wait. It's self-referral, so you basically fill in what's wrong. There's a little drawing of a human and you mark on it where the problems are. So knees, hips, back, shoulders, wrists and fingers. So the last time I went to physio, I was waiting for about three months roughly. But in the meantime, waiting to actually go and see said physio, I got sent pamphlets and leaflets saying try these, especially ones for the fingers, hands, and the wrists, to actually get a proper read on what's wrong with the knees and the hips and the back. I have to physically see the physio, and that took about just like slightly over 2 months, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 weeks. And I didn't mind waiting because in the meantime they sent me all this information about what to do. Try these movements, especially with the wrist. These will help until we actually come and see you. They gave me basic ones for the knees, but they actually physically have to feel the hips and see the movement for the hips and the lower back, which is understandable because the hips and lower back, you actually need to feel what's physically wrong. I didn't mind waiting because they actually gave me additional information before going to see the physio, which is good. I appreciate. Plus, I asked my sister. She was a font of knowledge for me, especially where the knees were concerned. Try these ones. And the next time you're up, I will check the knees myself and see how bad they are. Thanks, sister. She did check the knees and she turned around and said to me, your knees are fucked. A bit blunt, but to the point, I guess.
We're going to stop the SNP incompetence. We're going to stop the over-bureaucracy. We're going to reform our system to make sure we're using the capacity that exists in the NHS.
Bureaucracy. Seriously, how can you say that with a straight face? Seriously, do you see how bad the bureaucracy is down in Westminster? What the fuck, dude? Oh God, that's fucking hilarious. Oh dear God. This man is a fucking joke. Okay,
All
carry
across
on,
our
Anna.
country to bring down those waiting lists
Make me laugh
and to
at
make
me.
sure we have an NHS fit for the future.
Okay,
We're
so
going to renegotiate
that's a
the
lot
GP.
of extra funding, presumably. So for example, would you...
Best performing NHS in the UK. Have been for the last 6 years, so just before the pandemic. There we go. We handled the pandemic better than the Tories, which really isn't that hard considering how inept they were. Thanks, Boris. The bodies piled high. Never forget that. Boris is a fucking monster. Well, easier saying Tory. Best performing NHS in the UK. Please don't forget that. Thanks, Alice.
You increase the proportion of the Scottish budget that is spent on the NHS?
No, again, Laura, you are falling into a trap of thinking that the SNP is spending every penny of money well. There is £5.2 billion of more money available to the SNP since Labour came to government, but what is there to show for it? The money exists, but we have to remove the blockages and the incompetence, and the single biggest...
I'm not sure what he's talking about there. I need to go and look that up, see what he's talking about. There's probably conditions connected to that money. Let's look it up after this. That's like the 5.2 billion that the Scottish government aren't using. I'm curious about that one. Let's see what it is after this.
Blockage, and the single biggest reason for that incompetence is the SNP, and that's how we've got to get rid of them next year.
Let's talk about reform, because they are also going to be a challenge to you in this upcoming election. Keir Starmer has talked about using every ounce of energy to fight reform. He called the party the enemy whose policies will tear the country apart. Do you agree with the strength of that language?
Well, you look at what Reform did in the Hamilton by-election. They spent thousands of pounds questioning my identity, questioning my loyalty to Scotland, the country that I call home, the country I'm bringing my children up in, the country that I'm working day and night to try and improve for everybody. Nigel Farage, on the other hand, doesn't understand Scotland, doesn't care about Scotland, and probably doesn't even know many parts of Scotland, and he'd have to put it into his sat-nav. This is a guy that can only create the noise and is a chancer. He can't win an election next year. All he can do is help the SNP stay in power.
Okay,
And we're going to reject
do you agree with
the divisive politics.
Do you agree with
Nigel
using
Farage.
words like enemy and fight as you try to counter reform?
Well, we are going to fight the bile and the divisive politics.
Oh, Speedy, is it hurting again? Yeah, you go and lie down. If you feel a little bit better, feel free to come back. You know where to find me. But yeah, hot water bottle, cushions or pillows to help support it. Happy give you a massage or something, or gummies or edibles. Personally, I would like a hash brownie, tasty. It's been years since I've had a hash brownie. Yeah, you go and lie down, sweetie. Thank you for lurking, though. Always good to have you around in case any fucking idiots turn up. I've got Jim. We have Jim here. He can bonk them. Again, thanks for being a mod, Jim. Yeah, you go and lie down. If you need to go and relax, I'll be here. Don't you worry if you want to come back. But you go and look after yourself. Ha ha ha. Bonk.
Of reform. We're going to confront the issues that people legitimately have and therefore are tempted to vote reform.
Are they the
but we are
enemy?
going to have no truck. Nigel Farage is an opponent. He probably thinks I'm the enemy. He thinks that I'm an outsider. He thinks I don't belong. I think I am more Scottish than he will ever be.
But Sir Keir Starmer's referred to them as the enemy. Do you agree with that word?
I think I am more representative of British values than Nigel Farage will ever be. And so he is a political opponent, and we're going to defeat him. Scotland's going to reject him, and I'm confident the UK is going to reject him in the next general election.
Let's talk about ID cards, well, digital IDs, which of course have been floated this week. Judging by the reaction to this sudden announcement, because it wasn't in the manifesto, more than 2 million people have already signed a petition so far, a parliamentary petition. Was it really worth pursuing something this divisive?
Look, I think it depends what it is we're talking about. I have deep concerns, obviously, about all things related to civil liberties. For example, if there was an ID card that was to be used for stop and search purposes, I would think that would be a negative. If it is as it's being described, a digital ID system, for example, you get your driving license on a digital platform, you get your national insurance card
it's
on a digital
intended to
platform.
deter illegal migration, isn't it? Because you'd require it to work legally here. Would it deter somebody from making a perilous channel crossing and possibly risking their life or that of their family? Do you believe that digital ID will actually deter that?
Well, if what we're talking about here is people having to give evidence that they are legally able to work, that comes from your national insurance card and also other forms of ID, and that exists instead on your mobile phone.
I really would like a yes or no if you think
positive.
it will deter people from making an illegal journey here.
Well, I think it's a multi-spoke approach. I think stopping illegal work and supporting legal migration is important, but there's wider issues about how we stop illegal migration.
Okay, if I may just as well address one final point. Scottish Labour MSP Faisal Chowdhury has been suspended over an allegation of inappropriate conduct. He's the second Labour MSP to have been suspended in the last 2 months. The SNP and the Conservatives have asked for clarity from you, reasons why he was suspended. Are you able to tell us any more about the nature of that complaint?
Well, I've got to say some of the language from the SNP I find deeply concerning because I don't think they understand independent complaint procedures and also safeguarding issues. We have an independent complaints procedure. Complaints go to that independent body. That independent body believes that there is enough there to investigate, and therefore we have suspended Faisal Chowdhury while that investigation takes place, and he will sit as an independent MSP.
How long will that investigation take?
That's a matter for the independent body.
Okay. Anas Sarwar, thank you very much indeed for joining
so
us on the Sunday Show. Andrew Black is here to tell us what is coming up on BBC Radio Scotland after 10:30. The conversation continues.
Yeah, hi Laura, and we're going to be getting all the vibes from the Labour conference in Liverpool during the programme. As we've seen and heard this morning, things ain't going fantastically well for Labour at the moment. Also in the programme, we're going to be speaking to the Climate Change Secretary for Scotland, Gillian Martin. We're told it's Climate Change Week next week. Obviously an issue which concerns a lot of people, but you were mentioning reform there a bit earlier on. If more people
I will be back
in Scotland want to back the Reform Party, does that suggest that maybe voters are looking for a slightly different approach when it comes to net zero targets and oil and gas drilling in the North Sea? We're also going to have our regular review of the Sunday newspapers. The main theme on a lot of the front pages today, immigration.
OK, Andrew, thank you very much. We'll see you at 10:30. Right, with 1 in 5 children in Scotland said to be living in poverty, could cancelling outstanding council tax debt for struggling families be a way to help alleviate that? Well, Scottish Green Party co-leader Ross Greer thinks it could. So how would that work? Well, a little earlier this morning, Ross Greer came into the studio to discuss the proposal. Welcome to the Sunday Show, and thank you very much for coming in today. Let's start by talking about council tax debt, because you basically want the rules around this to change so that the length of time that people can be pursued to pay up is shortened. Tell us more about that, what the situation is right now and what you want to change.
So at the moment, there's about £1.8 billion of council tax debt across Scotland, and a huge amount of it is held by people who are in pretty desperate situations, people who are already in poverty. And we should start off by reminding ourselves that to have 1 in 5 children in poverty in one of the richest countries in the history of the planet is absolutely outrageous. And it's ridiculous to be in a situation where you've got councils who are providing these children with free school meals because they recognise that their families are struggling, but when the kids get home from school, there's sheriff's officers knocking at their door because the same council that's offering the support during the day is chasing them for debts that they know they can't pay. It's fundamentally unpayable debt. So in England, council tax debt is written off after 6 years of being pursued. In Scotland, it takes 20 years, and that clock resets every time you try and make a repayment. So in practice, some people in Scotland are still in debt from council tax from 1991 when we introduced that system. If we brought the debt rules back in line with England at 6 years, or what I'm proposing, which is 5 years for Scotland, we'd be able to break this cycle of poverty that so many of these families are in. And councils wouldn't lose out because this is unpayable debt, it's toxic debt. If they couldn't pay it within 5 years, they're highly unlikely to be in a situation where they're going to be able to pay it after 10 or 15 or 20.
What do you think the scale of that problem is then? How many people do you think there are out there struggling with that level of council tax debt?
It's certainly well into the thousands of families. It's very hard to quantify. We know that there's £1.8 billion of total council tax debt. Most of that will be from within the last 5 years, but there will certainly be tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of this toxic and unpayable, really long-term debt. When you speak to families who are in these kind of situations, it's pretty horrendous. You know, I've heard from parents who think of themselves as bad parents because they feel unable to get their children the things that they need because they're trying to pay off these debts. You end up in ridiculous situations where to pay off their council tax debt to the council, if they're living in council housing, they end up in rent arrears for that, or very often you sometimes see families who are not in council housing, they're in maybe private rented accommodation, but they are unable to pay their rent because they're trying to pay off a council tax debt. They end up homeless and the council ends up having to pay more because it has the duty to house them at that point. So we're creating a situation where councils are no better off, and some of the most desperate families in this country are afraid to engage with the council for a whole variety of other services and support they need.
Have some people been criminalised over this?
The worst situations that I've heard of are in cases of domestic abuse, where the survivor of domestic abuse ends up actually being liable for the debts of the person who has abused them, whose abuse they've survived, because of the rules around joint liability for council tax debt. So we actually have agreement. I got MSPs to agree that we would move now specifically on the issue of domestic abuse survivors, because what we find in some cases is even where the survivor's been able to escape abuse, their abuser's still trying to exert control over them by forcing them to pay off these council tax debts. So I have got MSPs to agree to that. That's a huge relief. But what we need to recognise is there's a reason that it's a 6-year limit on this debt in England. The 20-year limit in Scotland isn't working. Councils are not recovering this money. The amount of money they need to spend themselves on legal fees, on sheriff's officers trying to get it back is usually about the same as the amount of money they're getting, and in some cases it's more. Councils are losing money and these families are being caught in this constant cycle of poverty and crisis. They're literally afraid of every knock on their door.
Councils are also struggling for money though too, and some people watching might think, well, I have paid my council tax for X amount of years, I've struggled to pay my council tax, why should some people be able to have this debt cancelled?
So it's not the case that you would simply be allowed to stop paying your council tax. You would be still pursued for 5 years for it. The council would be able to pursue you. It would have the option to pursue you legally if it needed to. But if it's got to the point of after 5 years of efforts by the council to get you to repay, which will include legal action, which will include sheriff's officers, if you're still not paying after that point, it's very often because the kind of people we're talking about are just locked into cycles of poverty, locked into cycles of financial crisis. So the council's not getting any of this money back, but it's very often pushing these people further into crisis. You have families who really need the support of their local council for all sorts of other reasons, but they are terrified of contacting the council because they know that's just going to reset the clock on these council tax debts that they can't afford to pay. We need to do something to break out of this cycle.
And are you hopeful that's going to happen?
I was really glad to hear the First Minister say that he agrees with it in principle. He said he's still got some concerns around consultation. My argument is if you agree with it in principle, you can vote for my proposals this coming Tuesday, and then we can do the consultation with councils before we commence this rule. But if we agree in principle that the 20-year limit is not working, it's unpayable debts, it's chasing desperate families for money that they're never going to be able to pay, then MSPs can agree to this on Tuesday. And it'll take a huge amount of pressure off of some of the most desperate families in the country.
Let's talk about that housing bill, the next stage, of course, being voted on in those coming days. It will allow councils to impose rent controls, capping increases at the rate of inflation plus 1 percentage point. But there are exemptions, aren't there? Mid-market rent and build-to-let homes will be exempt. You and some charities are critical of that. Tell us why, because the Scottish Government say that this is important in order to keep the house building sector healthy, and that it could suppress house building if they don't do this.
What we need to do is support people who are renting. Rents have increased far beyond the increase in wages, far beyond inflation, year after year after year. So we have people who are stuck, particularly in the private rental sector. They are unable to save money to get their own deposit. They very often can't even afford to cover the rent itself, so we've constantly got people finding themselves homeless because landlords are increasing the rent beyond what they can afford to pay. Exempting build to rent from the new rent controls that the Greens are bringing in. We're the party that introduced this bill in the first place, but other parties have amended it to exempt build to rent. That is just an invitation for
So is that a failure on your part? Do you feel that you didn't push hard enough, that you haven't been able to get the amendments that you wanted?
We pushed hard, but ultimately Parliament is a democracy, and if other parties by majority agree, that is unfortunately something that they've been able to pass.
You'll have to vote it through, won't you? They'll be relying on your support.
Because even with that, Scotland will still, for the first time in decades, have a system of rent controls, and renters will have a whole range of other rights. Renters will be able to keep pets, they'll be able to decorate their home, they'll have far more protection from eviction because of what the Greens have introduced. It's a shame that build to rent has been exempted. That's just an invitation for your big commercial landlords to jack up the rent and continue this problem. But across a whole range of other areas of the rental sector, people will actually be protected now from these ridiculous rent increases that were ultimately just about, very often, lining the pockets of landlords. It was not about affordability, it wasn't about increasing costs for landlords, it was about greed. Plain and simple, it was about greed. That's why we've seen
Lots of landlords would disagree with that.
They would, but the evidence is clear. Rents have gone up far beyond inflation, far beyond wage rises year after year after year. And the reason for that is greed. It is not, if landlords were struggling, if they needed a little bit more, they could have raised rents in line with inflation. But I've heard from constituents who've had 10, 20, 30, 40% rent increases attempted by their landlord. That is just ridiculous, and it's pushing people into poverty. And ultimately, for the landlord, the home is just an asset. For the renter, it's their home. It's where they live, and without it, they will be homeless. That's why we're bringing these protections in.
Ross Greer, thank you very much indeed for coming in. We'll have to leave it there, but good to have you on the Sunday Show.
Thank you.
And now just time for a quick reminder that Debate Night is back on our screens every Wednesday.
I voted for Ross to become one of the co-leaders. I also voted for Gillian to become the other co-leader. Actually voting for something, well, technically during the 97 election, I did get what I voted for, which was Jackie Baillie as my MP. So I voted for Ross and for Gillian to become co-leaders of the Scottish Greens. So delighted, so fucking delighted. I love Ross. He's my lovely little ginger twink. I can't wait to meet him. It's going to be so good. So fucking good.
9 p.m. on the BBC Scotland channel. Here's Stephen Jardine to tell us more.
Thank you. Debate Night is the only show in Scotland giving you the chance to put your questions to the people in power. This Wednesday, we're going to be in Dundee. You can come along and have your say by going to the website bbc.co.uk/debate night. And make sure you watch Debate Night with me Wednesday at 9 on the BBC Scotland channel, and then a little bit later, 10:40 on the BBC One Scotland channel.
That's it from us. Scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen now. It'll take you to BBC Sounds, where you can continue with the Sunday show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Laura McPiper. Let's check out this video from Helena. Oh God, is that long? Okay, I'll see if I can actually get through the entire hour. We'll go back to the beginning. Oh, that one might be quite fun as well. Let's start off with Helena going after the Lib Dems. Always a fun time.
So I'm a member of the Greens organised group within the Green Party, which is essentially an internal grouping of left-wing socialist members of the Green Party trying to move the Green Party's policy prospectus to a lot more kind of radical and socialist in terms of its economics and its messaging. We backed Zach Polanski in the leadership election. Just recently, we backed his platform of eco-populism. And I feel like we're doing a really good job at finding a way of bringing people together to be able to campaign both internally and externally within the Green Party and outside the Green Party to bring people not only to our positions within the Green Party, but people who agree with our positions on the outside to the Green Party. That's what Greens Organised has been doing from the start. And one thing that we've been very clear about from the start is making the Green Party's external communications a lot better, understanding how to get involved in the new media landscape to try and sell the politics of the Green Party to people outside the tent and get people involved with understanding our positions and trying to at least push the Green Party and Greens organisers' political positions within the social media ecosystem, right? So we've done a lot of bits and pieces, both going after Labour, going after the Tories, getting clips of things from YouTube that we agree with, putting up on TikTok, short form content on Instagram, to be able to make people more aware of both what's going on politically and what the left and the Greens' positions on these are. Because people don't know our positions. They think we're a single issue party for the environment, which we aren't. We oppose the economic prescriptions of the mainstream parties too. And you can sign up at greensorganised.uk if you'd like to get involved. Thank you for the link, Andy Carter in chat. One of the things that we have been doing, in fact, somebody who is somewhat affiliated with this channel has been doing for Greens Organised, is producing content which are these little explainer things around policy or around political connections of people that we are opposed to. So there's a really good video that we did about donors to Rachel Reeves. We did a really important thing about the political positions of Reform UK. And we just recently, the other day, put up an explainer video about the financial interests of the Liberal Democrats, which you can see on the screen just here. I'll leave the link in the description so you can watch in your own time, or I guess you can pause and read the captions which are on the screen for you. Either way, we put up this piece of content going after the people who donate to the Liberal Democrats and how, as a member-led party in the Greens, we are essentially different to the Liberal Democrats being a liberal centrist party, really, who are funded by quite rich people who share their liberal outlook on the economy. So we looked at 3 different donors who have some pretty sketchy past and how that conflicts with the purported interests of the Liberal Democrats. And people weren't happy. People were not happy about the fact that we were going after the Liberal Democrats on Instagram and on TikTok in the comments, saying things such as one thing that you can see on screen. That's really unfair. I'm a Green Party member, but Ed is a decent bloke and a very good local MP. He's been pushing progressive positions and has not been neutral on Palestine or Trump or Farage attacks on migration. Really disappointed with this from you guys. Thought you had more integrity than this. Completely disappointing content. This is not what the left is about. Why are you spending your time trying to bring down the Liberal Democrats? Surely you need to focus on the bigger parties. I'm sure there's unethical funding of most political parties if you look deep enough. Greens on their own won't win in my opinion, and I love what you stand for, but I'm so over political slanging matches. Just focus on what you can offer and not the failings of other parties. We all know that pretty much all political parties do dodgy things to get themselves into positions of power, to be honest. Come on, the Green Party is better than this. We don't need to do slagging off other parties. Let's get to talking about what we stand for and demonstrating how great we are. If we must talk down other parties, let's focus on those we have huge differences from. Okay, right. Do people just have complete amnesia about the reality of what the Liberal Democrats have done in their time politically? We're just kind of like forgetting about the history of the Liberal Democrats up to this point. Oh, they're different, right? They've stood up to the billionaires. They've stood up to the Trump and Farage attacks on migration, as the comments made. I'm like, okay, maybe we can have those points. I have put out a whole video on this channel actually saying that I think that Davey and Cooper's positions on the geopolitics of Atlanticism are a welcome break from the kind of Atlanticist politics that we get from Tory Reform Labour, right? And they've been okay on Palestine too, but that's as far as this goes, right? That's absolutely as far as this goes. We have a real problem, actually, I think, in that whilst the base of the Liberal Democrats is mostly high earners, they are the richest cohort of voters. In fact, you look at the last election, the only party that really saw all of their votes increase as you went up the income spectrum was the Liberal Democrats. They have a rich voter base. But a lot of young people think that they're just a nominally progressive centre-left party. That is not the case. That is fundamentally not the case. I have a whole video on my channel called "The Liberal Democrats Are Garbage and Here's Why." And it lists off all of the sins of the coalition, right? I don't think I need to go over what they were like in coalition, but people keep saying that they're like different now, that they're a different party, and they just aren't. Ed Davey wrote a chapter in the Orange Book, i.e. the Liberal Democrat right-wing neoliberal Bible. He is not from the Social Democratic wing of the party. When it comes to economic policy prescriptions, they don't support taxing private schools. They don't support the reforms to agricultural property relief. They didn't support increasing broader taxation to fund public services, and they have always supported running a budget surplus. They are monetarists and liberal on the economy in every possible way, and pointing out the fact that they are also funded by quite rich capitalists, which you will see in the video if you look at Greens Organisers' account on socials, right? That it's clear that anyone who can get millions of pounds from Lord Sainsbury probably isn't going to be a progressive social democrat or even a progressive liberal when it comes to the economy. They have ruled out things such as wealth taxes. In fact, whilst Christine Jardine, before the election, refused to apologise for the coalition's austerity problems, literally went to proactively justify the austerity in a conversation with Nish Kumar by bringing up Liam Burns' note in the Treasury about there being no money left, like the lie that the nation's finances are like a household budget, right? These aren't people who are progressive on the economy. Not in any sense of the word. No. That's not true. Ed Davey, the very same. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey refuses 6 times to say whether coalition-era austerity was a mistake, and denied that those...
Yes, they were a mistake, and they got rightfully punished for it for propping up or siding with the fucking Tories. Get wrecked, Ed Davey and the Liberal Democrats. I hope you lose that. I don't know if they've got I think they might have some constituencies up here. Obviously, the Western Northern Isles, I think they vote majority Lib Dem. For more evidence on why the Northern Isles, the Northern Part of Scotland and Orkney and Shetland still have a Lib Dem MP, just look to someone who is in this coalition government. Alistair Carmichael still exists. He's still in the Palace of Westminster. Northern Isles, well, Orkney and Shetland, that's his Westminster constituency. What the fuck are you doing? Alistair Campbell is a wanker. I don't like him.
policies partly implemented alongside the Conservatives were to blame for the current crisis facing the NHS. Even when you speak to Liberals, Democrats, they will say 9 years of the Conservatives and not 14 years because they don't think that that counts when they were in coalition, even though they waved through budget after budget that led to hundreds of thousands of people dying from cuts and austerity. Over 800 times Ed Davey voted with the coalition government because he was a minister for a long portion of that. And at no point did he see fit to go, maybe all of these swinging cuts to things that are important for the poorest in society, maybe I shouldn't vote for this and I should step down as a government minister. But no, power was more important to him. Power was more important. But people will say, but no, Helena. Ed Davey, he cares about SEND. He cares about what's happening in terms of people's access to education for disabled people, right? He opposed the government's reforms to PIP. Well, this was Ed Davey at the Liberal Democrat conference last week.
But there's also a case on welfare expenditure where we've got to reduce that too. One of the things that the Conservatives did so badly, they got rid of face-to-face assessments for personal independence payments. And when they did that, they did it initially for the right reasons because it was during the pandemic, but they kept it on afterwards. And what's happened since then, a massive increase in the number of people claiming PIP, and there's a real suggestion in those numbers, by the way the Conservatives manage the system, that there's quite a lot of fraud there. And surely everyone can agree we should go after the fraud to make sure the people who need the benefits, the people who are really disabled, can still get them.
So that would mean cuts in welfare?
Well, it would mean stopping fraud.
Vanishingly rare, Ed. Vanishingly rare. 330,000 excess deaths, anyone. That's what you oversaw. That's what you were part of, Ed, when you were in cabinet during the coalition years. 2010 to 2015, by the way. You propped up these guns while thousands of people across the land were dying. You got punished for it in 2015. Rightly so. You propped up one of the worst Tory governments we have ever seen in this country. Thanks. Get wrecked.
Yes.
So there is Ed Davey just openly parroting the abject lie that there is fraud in the PIP system. This is a total, unmitigated lie. This is a man who people say, oh, he's got a disabled son. He cares about the disabled, right? He cares about these people. Oh, no, it's really important, what he's saying about SEND and things like that. And I'm like, this guy is advocating for cuts to disability by lying about the idea that there is PIP fraud. We quite literally have the data. So 2024, half of which was when the Conservative Party were in government, the period that he is criticising, the fraud rate, 0. Claim on error, 0.3% of total PIP expenditure. It's one of the lowest fraud rates in any sector of the welfare state. Any sector. Out here, just openly telling blatant lies to justify the same kind of cuts that he happily waved through hundreds of times when he was in a coalition government with the Conservatives as an Orange Book Liberal. So all of these people getting mad go, oh, you can't attack the Liberal Democrats. You can't attack the Lib Dems, right? You can't go after the Liberal Democrats. They're on our side. Bullshit. They are not on our side, right? Sure, maybe you can justify like a tactical vote in the southwest if you live in a leafy southwest village and it's the only way of stopping the Tories or reform. Sure, be my guest. You live in Twickenham, you live in Maidenhead, right? It's only the Lib Dems beating the Tories or reform there. Go nuts, see if I care. But there is a huge group of young people who do not know what the coalition was like, who do not know what the Liberal Democrats are like, who do not know fundamentally what these people believe and what they would do if they got any amount of access to political office. When they're in local government, it's all NIMBYism anyway. It's all there to protect the interests of their very wealthy voter base. Their very wealthy voter base who fundamentally want to see their house prices go up, which is why, on a local level, NIMBYs keep blocking development of things like council housing. It's just, fundamentally, they are still part of the same macroeconomic failed system that the Green Party fund.
It is different up here for reasons. Yes, I get that, but there's still parts of Scotland that vote for the Lib Dems. Why? They propped up the scum. You shouldn't be doing this. I don't trust. I don't like it. Davey, fair enough, you've got a special needs son. I get it. The cuts, the austerity that went through during 2010 to 2015 were targeting people like your son. We're targeting people like me, treating us as subhuman. No amount of time given to the fucking Lib Dems. No. I despise yous for propping up the fucking absolute bastards. Correct, Brodie. Good Joy's comrades. One of the younger members of the community is here. Hi, Brodie. Helena talking about the Lib Dems. No, we are never going to let you forget this. You propped up the bastards. Good evening, comrade. Welcome. How are you?
Fundamentally stands against. And progressives, socialists, even liberals and social democrats should be opposing, or at least progressive liberals. Centrist liberals like the Lib Dems obviously are part of that same.
Thank you for the alert. I hope the assignments are going well.
Failed paradigm. But if you want to actually radically change society to make life better, not just for the young people, who I think are being essentially conned by the Lib Dems because they came of age post-coalition, right? But broadly to save things like...
You're welcome, comrade. 300,000 deaths caused by Lib Dems plus Tories bring about austerity. Journeying Jordan, hell yes. Well said in Helena chat. The longer the NIMBYs wait, the better the quality of social housing is going to be. I tend to agree with you, Satnav. Thank you. He's in Heaven. Satnav is down in the southwest, essentially. Hi, Satnav. I wish people would stop blaming the Greens for NIMBYism. No, the Lib Dems are far, far worse. Far worse. At a local level, councils across the land, especially in England, they don't get councils up here for reasons. Deservedly so, because no, fuck off. They're usually going to sort of no overall control, and the loose alliances come through, so things get voted through in certain councils. I would love to proscribe NIMBYism. Shut up. We need the housing. I really don't care if you want your house price to go up. That is fucking selfish. The country needs these houses, so zip it.
The planet. We need to go after the Lib Dems on policy and on the fact that they are, again, as a Liberal Party, very happy to take money from the super rich, which we in the Greens do not do. And your party wouldn't either. So people who are part of that sector of the left would also agree that going after the Lib Dems is reasonable. But everyone somehow believing that this grand coalition that we would need to be able to push back Reform UK, or the Labour Party or the Conservatives, who think the Lib Dems should be part of this?
So the Lib Dems, if there's any justice in this world, will go nowhere near government.
So you're reversing privatisation, the Liberal Democrats disagree, we should...
They're out.
I'm sorry, mate, you live in fantasy land. You absolutely live in a fantasy realm where just because the Lib Dems are admittedly pretty good on trans rights, for example, does that really justify Ed Davey literally going out there and lying about PIP fraud? I don't think it does. I really don't think that it does. And there's a reason why they oppose all these government measures to make the economy fairer, given that it's their wealthy voter base which would be inconvenienced by such reforms. And also, they want to ban union funding, trade union funding for political parties, which is the cleanest money in politics. So I would take what they say about political integrity with a pinch of salt. I think it is, given that young people are where the Greens do best with, an imperative that we make sure that these people know exactly what the Liberal Democrats are like. It is not splitting It is not attacking people on the same side to make young people understand the reality of liberal capitalist governance, which is what the Liberals have done every time they've had access to any amount of power. They split the vote to take votes away from Michael Foot before. They split the vote to take votes away from Jeremy Corbyn. And they're going to split the vote away from the Greens moving forward if young people in this country don't get the full idea of the reality of what the Liberal Democrats are like. And whilst
Brodie, as someone on the younger side of my community, do you agree with Helena? Do you remember the coalition government? If you don't, I can find a video for you. I can show you exactly what it was like. I remember it. I fucking hated it. And I kept on spinning it. Why are you propping up these bastards? Fuck off. You do not give tacit support or actual material support. Well, not material, but political support to those goals, to those bastards who are hell bent on destroying people like me's lives. No. You got punished for it. Good. You fucking deserved it. Do not prop up the scum. Just don't. Fuck off. Mm-mm-mm. I'm glad they got punished for it in 2015 because they propped up the bastards. Obviously, we got another Tory government, a majority Tory government, which Boris fucking destroyed a few years later. Love it. Laughing. Haha. Get wrecked. Literally booting out double-digit figures of backbenchers. One Nationers, actually. That is a rite of passage. I remember it intimately. It was horrible. I fucking despised it. It's not good. No. Supporting those bastards. No, not going to forget it. Lib Dems get wrecked.
people were in the comments of that Instagram post saying things like, we need to talk about what we're good at. And I'm like, well, no, you also have to cut through the bullshit too. I think that the Greens organisers have been really good at putting forward a positive perspective about what we offer as a political grouping, as a political ideology, and as a party. I think they've done a really good job of that. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be posting and making content explaining why you shouldn't vote for the other side. We are better both on policy and we also have higher integrity. And to be able to make that comparison, you both need to understand the political ideology and the political policy prescriptions and the funding models of the other parties as well as ours to be able to make an informed judgment on both. And that's why content that is going after the Lib Dems is important for the left to do. So people, for some reason, who think that the Greens are just like part of some kind of progressive coalition with the Lib Dems, it's just not true. It just fundamentally is not true. In the wisest of words of Patrick Stewart portraying Vladimir Lenin, do not trust the Liberals. They will betray you. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.
Thank you, Helena.
It looks like Conservative Home have got the knives out for reform councils. Here, a Conservative councillor gives a damning glimpse of Reform's governance of Derbyshire County Council. Locally, that's meant they've ducked debates on issues where you might have expected them to have shown some conviction. We've asked questions on issues like flags, Ukraine or wokeism, only to receive office-drafted waffle in response. But ultimately, the poor things just can't help themselves. Controversy has followed them around like a bad smell. In just a few short months, we've seen climate change dismissed as an ideological term, 5 adult education centres were closed illegally and behind closed doors, despite promises only a few weeks before that thorough consultation would be a prerequisite to any decision being made. So what's life like under a reform-run council? Chaotic, conspiratorial, over-controlled and oddly unambitious. For all the noise, they've delivered little beyond what they've inherited, while alienating officers, antagonising communities and exposing their own inexperience. This view is one echoed by Labour MP Natalie Fleet. Listen though, as Sarah Pochin exposes her true Tory self when she basically says to constituents with kids, "You're on your own."
We've had a day centre, adult education centre, closed in Shirebrook. There's no public consultation. There's no transparent meeting. We've had the Nottingham Post banned next door because they don't actually want to be held to account at all. We have got SEND children who have not gone to school today because Reform haven't filled the paperwork in on time. I've got 15 families who are constituents who have not had their babies go to school. And we're not hearing back from them.
I've got 40... answer that, and then we're going to move on to something else.
All they're interested in is shouting, putting flags up, not acting in the interest of the British people or
Sarah,
local
could you
people.
answer that?
Failing
Specific suggestions.
You're talking absolute nonsense.
This is happening in
I'm going
today.
to answer you.
Pointy fingers. Ridiculous.
I shall sit down here. I shall sit with my hands.
Let's answer that.
But you've come up with some specific individual examples.
With Reform in power.
Let me answer that. Reform have been in power in that council since May. The fact is that Reform is saving money. It's looking at where there's waste. Now, just let me speak. No, I'm sorry, but the primary responsibility of getting kids to school is with the parents. Where there are SEND children with particular needs, of course, we need to assist that. But there's an awful lot of abuse of the system.
Click here for a bunch of rotten, dumb and bigoted Reform councillors who haven't got a clue how to run a council.
What the fuck?
Are able to become mainstream. So this is worse because you've now got these same... Evening, everyone. Hello.
Correct, Brodie. Well said. Okay, let's see how far we can get into it this time. Hi, Phil.
So we're going to start off with a couple of things that's been in the news this week, including one that's technically in the news, but it's not very prominent, about, again, the far right showing who they are, because the far right claim to be patriots, no, and they claim to want to protect women, which, you know, is a very hunter-gatherer sort of thing to do, isn't it? Very caveman. But even that is powerfully untrue. I'm going to show you why as well, for those who didn't already know. There's some people asking there about the digital ID, so bring that one up later, because that is going to be a bit of an issue. I did do a video on it earlier. There's not a huge more to say about it, but absolutely bring that up a bit later. But just to begin with, so there's something, it is sort of in the news, but it's not very prominent, right? And so I did a video earlier today, just to sort of preface it. I did a video earlier today on how, so Nigel Farage, and I'm not sure whether this is wise or not, it's certainly a little risky. Nigel Farage has decided he doesn't want to get the blame for the massive surge in immigration we had, because although nobody is pinning it on him, they absolutely should be. And I suppose he can't take the chance that Labour at some point will work out how to communicate, right? And what I would certainly be doing if I were Labour would be saying, do you know that massive spike in net migration? 2022, 2023, that massive spike in net migration. That was caused by a policy. And you can prove it with, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't going to sit down and look through graphs, but you can prove it. It was down to a policy that Nigel Farage vocally supported, right? So Nigel Farage doesn't want to get the blame for it. So he's calling it the Boris wave, which is perfectly reasonable because, you know, if you say to Reform UK supporter, oh, Nigel Farage, I seem to have missed that point, Phil, where he was Prime Minister. And he was. Boris Johnson was indeed the Prime Minister and Priti Patel was his Home Secretary, the one he chose to
I keep on trying to get through this. I tried today earlier on and I couldn't. Super happy when he was prepping for dinner earlier this afternoon. Oh, about 12 hours ago, actually. I tried to sit down and watch it on my own. Just watch it. See if I could actually get through the whole hour and 7 minutes. I struggled. I got to the same point, which is about, I got 20, maybe about 20 minutes in. And I couldn't do it. Let's see if I can do a little bit better now that I'm drunk. I might be able to. You never know. Weirder things have happened. How's your knee going, Brodie?
Implement that policy. But Nigel Farage praised it. He called it a huge step forward, right? So anyway, Boris Johnson hit back by talking about the national security threats that Nigel Farage poses because of his reticence to criticise Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Now, although Nigel Farage will happily say, "Oh no, it's totally Russia's fault," that no, absolutely, it's Russia's fault that Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's very nice of you. He nonetheless still says that it's our fault, NATO's fault, that Russia felt the need to, which is powerfully untrue. But nonetheless, that's his position, right? So Nigel Farage is making a big deal of that. So I'm going a roundabout way here. So what has this got to do with some news today? So you may have seen it. You won't have seen it prominently displayed. You may have seen it. The headline in the BBC is ex-reform politician admits Russia-linked bribery charges. Now that is downplaying a great deal. This particular ex-reform politician was Reform UK's Welsh leader, so fairly prominent, and more importantly than that, very, very close to Nigel Farage. Because you look at this and you think, so in terms of these bribery charges, by the way, he took money off Russia to make pro-Russian statements in the European Parliament when he was an MEP. Now, let's just go back over his past. So he was an MEP for UKIP, right, under Nigel Farage. And that's what people are saying, by the way. The ever-brilliant Emma Monk has done a debunk on it on Twitter, and apparently Blue Sky as well. We need more scientists in this. Because there's some people trying to say, oh no, that's UKIP, that's separate, that's UKIP. Because UKIP still exists, right? UKIP is still a political party. So they go, no, that's UKIP. No, it's not. Because these bribery charges are from after he was they weren't from while he was in UKIP, even with Nigel Farage, they were from afterwards. So what happened was, in fact, if you look at, I'll read it out to you in the news. Nathan Gill, 52, from oh Christ, I'll say Anglesey. Sorry, I'll mangle the Welsh specific Welsh town, Anglesey, I can pronounce that. Pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery between 6th of December 2018 and 18th of July 2019. That's the point at which he left UKIP. Why did he leave UKIP? Because Nigel Farage had just left UKIP. So Nigel Farage leaves UKIP, right? He follows him, as well as a few others, right? And these bribery charges relate to when he was an MEP, but aligned with Farage. He wasn't technically in a party then, because the Brexit Party, he did join the Brexit Party and then Reform UK. The Brexit Party didn't technically exist. Actually, the Brexit Party did exist during the latter period of this bribery thing. But the point is, he was very close to Nigel Farage. And given that Nigel Farage has, there's always been a lot of questions around Nigel Farage and his links with the Kremlin, as well as some other people he associates with. And, you know, you look at the fact that Boris Johnson recognises that that's the weakness, right? Because think about it this way. Boris Johnson, like Nigel Farage, he knows how to work the public. They're both populist leaders. They both understand how to, you know, what to go with. Their political antennae are quite useful for knowing what will chime with the public. Boris Johnson could have attacked, Nigel Farage for any number of things. Because Nigel Farage is very, in many ways, unconservative. And yet he chose to go with that one. Right, even though that is a weakness for Boris Johnson if you go back a few years, but he very much aligned with Ukraine after the full-scale invasion, so he feels strong on that. And more should be made of this. And the reason why I'm making a big deal of this, and I may do a specific video on it, but we will see, is because the far right claim to be patriots, right? They claim to be big patriots, and yet they have a lot of dubious links with foreign powers, just in general, but specifically hostile foreign powers, right? You've got people like, I mean, even Tommy Robinson's group have got some links with some Russian oligarchs, but that's more a Reform UK thing. But even Tommy Robinson has got links with people who are attacking the UK, such as Elon Musk, right? So they claim that they're patriots, and yet you've got people. He's been done for, you know, taking bribes from the Russian state, and that should be more prominent because Nigel Farage was very close to him. And now it's not just that guilt by association, because Nigel Farage has also promoted Russian talking points. Nigel Farage has also echoed Kremlin talking points. The only thing we don't know is, oh, did Nigel Farage accept money for it? He technically did, because he worked for Russia Today, didn't he? But in terms of, did he take money specifically for echoing pro-Russian talking points in the European Parliament? That's a question we should be asking, isn't it? Someone very close to him has been caught taking bribes from Russia to basically be the Kremlin's representative in the European Parliament. How do we know Nigel Farage didn't? Just because we haven't got the evidence? It's a question worth asking, isn't it? It's a question worth asking.
Rejoice, comrades. Limey Redneck is here. Hi, Limey. Welcome. How are you doing? Um, uh, hmm. Oh, GTF. Let's do GDF. That might be a little bit. Oh, what's the going through trying to find video to discuss. My leg's feeling a lot better. My right knee is still kind of fucked. Still stiff. I've been using ibuprofen gel to get rid of the worst of the pain and the stiffness. Seems to be working. This one should be fun. Take it away, GDF.
In March 2025, the American Association of University Professors filed a lawsuit against Secretary of State Marco Rubio, challenging, in their words, a Trump administration policy of targeting non-citizen students and faculty members for arrest and deportation based on their lawful political speech, particularly pro-Palestinian advocacy. Lawyers for the plaintiff called Peter Hatch as a witness. Hatch is Assistant Director of the Homeland Security Investigations Department within ICE. He confirmed that he has used the Canary Mission's website to find international students in order to investigate and deport them. They apparently combed through 5,000 names. The Canary Mission is known to many of you as an organization that doxes individuals, students and professors namely, for their support for the Palestinian cause. Unfortunately, these professors and especially students are doubtless unable to mount a substantial defense against such doxing. Never mind the weight of the Department of Homeland Security when that doxed information is used to investigate them. If individuals have already been targeted and face dire consequences for speaking out in support of Palestine, then perhaps it would be useful to expose the pro-Israel sympathies of powerful people that have all the resources in the world to defend themselves. Students and teachers don't have corporate law firms to protect them. I'd like to examine specifically individuals in the American news media. I'd argue that there is certainly a far more urgent need to expose the pro-Israel sympathies of powerful executives who wield enormous influence on Americans' understanding of world events and, in particular, the genocide of Palestinians being committed by the State of Israel. Support for the latter, the perpetrators of a genocide, is far more damning as compared to the former, the target and victims of said genocide. Genocide is a word that should be used without hesitation or qualification, since the growing and prevalent opinion is apparent from a recent resolution passed by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who are some 500 scholars of genocide and the Holocaust. The IAGS concluded Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians pursuant to the 1948 Genocide Convention. The IAGS is the largest organization of its kind in the world. Since then, the United Nations has reported that an independent inquiry has ruled the same, the first such development from the UN. This follows a lengthy and damning report titled Our Genocide by Israeli human rights group B'Tselem, and similar conclusions from several Israeli Holocaust scholars, including Raz Siegel, Amos Goldberg, Daniel Blattman, and Omer Bartov. I'd like to begin with CBS, which is owned by Paramount Skydance, whose chairman and CEO is David Ellison. But David's father, Larry Ellison, controls the company, the New York Times reported. Larry is one of the wealthiest people on earth. He apparently became the richest person briefly in September 2025. One of the founders of Oracle Corporation, he remains their executive chairman and their chief technical officer. Their CEO is Israeli-American Safra Katz. Katz and Ellison have made their support for Israel clear to their employees. When they opened a data center in Jerusalem in 2021, Katz said, "Our commitment to Israel is second to none. This is a free world and I love my employees, and if they don't agree with our mission to support the State of Israel, then maybe we aren't the right company for them. Larry and I are publicly committed to Israel and devote personal time to the country, and no one should be surprised by that." Ellison also, as reported by Variety in 2017, gave Friends of the Israel Defense Forces the largest donation in its history, at more than $16 million. He's reportedly friends with Netanyahu, and the Prime Minister vacationed at the Hawaiian island of Lanai, which is 98% owned by the billionaire. It's little surprise Paramount became the first major Hollywood studio to condemn a recently announced boycott of Israeli film institutions supported by some 4,000 actors and directors. Developments at CBS are worrisome enough to spur anonymous complaints to the media from company employees. The Independent recently reported, earlier this month, it was reported that Ellison
Damn it. They're not pin that. I'm rather upset with that. Why am I not allowed to pin? Don't let me pin it. Brody, can you go into mod view and pin your comment? I can't seem to pin it, which is weird. Correct. That needs pinned. Aha! Thank you, Brody. Business gets pinned.
was on the verge of purchasing the Free Press for well above $100 million and installing its stridently pro-Israel, anti-woke founder Bari Weiss into a senior leadership role at CBS News. Weiss, who was an opinion columnist for the New York Times before launching her heterodox media empire, would potentially be named the network's editor-in-chief or co-president as part of the deal. One CBS journalist told The Independent, "The idea that the overvaluation of a rag like the Free Press is going to give Bari Weiss riches beyond her wildest dreams is adding insult to injury to most of the real journalists at CBS News. One, she's not a journalist as far as we're concerned. And two, the idea that she's going to carry some sort of editorial stick for us is hard to swallow." At the same time, Larry and David Ellison are preparing a majority cash bid to purchase Warner Brothers Discovery and combine it with Paramount, creating an immense media powerhouse and potentially merging CBS with CNN, which would drastically reshape the news landscape. Indeed, CNN is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. In February 2024, Philip Weiss of Mondoweiss
Competitions Authority or whoever the whatever the fuck it is, whatever the equivalent is over there, use your antitrust laws to prevent that merger. I beg of you. How exactly is that free press? I would block it. God. It's getting worse. At one point, the end point of this is just one massive media outlet. I can see a battle coming with this. The government going up against these media conglomerates. Delightful. Just one massive fucking corporation in control of the media. Yes, that's free speech, isn't it? Just fucking end me. Fucking hell. You've got Teddy Roosevelt is probably spinning in his grave faster than a turbine, faster than an electrical generator. This should not be allowed to pass. Please, I beg of you, do not do this.
Observed, CNN's bias toward Israel starts at the top. Weiss declared plainly, David Zaslav, the CEO of CNN's parent company, is a Zionist. Hey everybody, due to the content of my videos, I'm not advertiser friendly, so if you want to support my work, consider becoming a patron for access to exclusive content and the GDF Discord server. I also accept donations. Thank you so much to everyone who has become a patron and donated. Love you all, thank you. There is an unusually frank primary source to support this. It's an interview Zaslav gave with the Israeli I-24 News where he praised the bombing of the King David Hotel in British Mandatory Palestine.
I love Israel.
That, let me remind you, if you don't know, or tell you if you don't know, that was an act of terrorism against the British authorities in the Mandate of Palestine. People got arrested for it. They were locked up because they were fucking terrorists trying to take out the British authorities in the Mandate. Don't get me wrong, we should never have been there and given support to the creation of the settler colonial entity. Delightful. That is still terrorism. Taking out British diplomats and workers. That act of terrorism. I'd love to get Kev to help me with this one. I think us being able to talk about it. He said that we might do a stream. He said to me last week. I'll DM him in the morning and ask him if he would like to talk about this, and actually we can explain the Mandate of Palestine after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, what it was like, the things of this nature, how the King David was actually bombed. in an act of overt terrorism, and how the Balfour Declaration sucks arse. Might be an idea, because this entire history and what our government is actively doing right now might be an idea to educate people about it.
Yeah, Tel Aviv is fantastic. I remember one Christmas with my whole family walking into the King David, remembering what happened to the King David, and thinking about how lucky we are to have Israel.
I'll bring up more videos
and the strength of the
terrorism.
Haganah and the Irgun and the heart of the Israeli people to fight for a free democracy.
ABC is owned by Disney, whose CEO Bob Iger announced on October 12, 2023, that he would donate $2 million to humanitarian relief in Israel. This would have been 3 days after the human animals and no food and no water announcement from Israel's defense minister, a donation that was matched by Michael Bloomberg. Of course, Fox, and ultimately the Wall Street Journal for that matter, is owned by the staunchly pro-Israel Rupert Murdoch. Just in December 2024, Murdoch spoke to a congregation at Sydney Central.
Rupert Murdoch is a ghoul. He's an Australian national. I don't think he ever became a British citizen. He might have. Okay, I'm checking. He was born in Australia, by the way. But he came here and bought up lots of our media in the late 60s. So I'm not entirely sure if he got British citizenship or not. Rupert Murdoch. You know what? Does Rupert Murdoch have British citizenship? Australian American. So he bought up our media, parts of our media, 1968. He's Australian American, so he was born in Australia, and he naturalized American citizenship. Oh, he lost it. He was born in Australia. He doesn't have Australian citizenship anymore. He got American citizenship in '85 when I was 6 years old, so 40 years ago. So a foreign national bought up two of our media companies in one in the 60s and one in the 80s. I would block that. I would prevent that. You have to be a British citizen to buy our media, to buy our businesses. But no, he came in and bought the Sun in 1968. Delightful. I despise this fool. Look at him, he's a crusty old cunt now.
Synagogue before Hanukkah, saying,
Israel, in the last 4 years, has been alone on the front line of Western democratic civilization,
defending shared values with incredible resilience. As reported by the Jerusalem Post, expressing optimism about the future, Murdoch added, with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump returning to the White House, Israel won't be alone anymore. Following October 7th, Fox joined other mass media corporations in donating millions to Israel. NBC is owned by Comcast, whose CEO Brian L. Roberts proposed to his future wife in Israel, an avid squash player. He donated squash.
Yes. 5 wives. Delightful. Just the outside of. Oh, don't worry, comrades. It was just the outsides of my ears. So this up helix, so this bit here, up here, and down here, where a lot of people get piercings done. I can't. My ears are very sensitive, and even down here in my lobes, I've done. Four times in my life I've tried to get pierced ears. I leave them at the sleepers in for the 30 days as required. Then I take them out and want to put in other earrings. But no, in the space of overnight while I sleep, the holes seal themselves back up. I've never been able to wear pierced earrings. That's why I have to buy clip-ons. Hang on. Ah, Bennett, dragons. What else do I have? Oh, there's one. Idrisil, Tree of Life from Norse mythology. I love Idrisil. What the hell? Ah, look at it pretty. I love my clip-on earrings. They look gorgeous. Ah, my lovely jewellery box. There you go.
Courts in Ra'anana, Israel. He also supports the Israeli sports group Maccabi USA and even hosted a party for athletes at Comcast's headquarters. He has a real strong affinity to Israel, said David Pudlin, a Philadelphia lawyer and Robert Squash partner. Comcast joined in donating money to relief efforts in Israel. The New York Times has come under scrutiny for its Israel reporting. In April 2024, The Intercept reported on a November 2023 memo that instructed journalists to avoid using words including genocide, ethnic cleansing, and even occupied territory. The memo also instructs reporters not to use the word Palestine except in very rare cases, and to steer clear of the term refugee camps to describe areas of Gaza historically settled by displaced Palestinians expelled from other parts of Palestine during previous Israeli-Arab wars. A spokesperson for the New York Times defended the memo, issuing guidance like this to ensure accuracy, consistency, and nuance in how we cover the news is standard practice. A defense of the memo by a company spokesperson signals that it reflects company policy, for which the chief executive, Meredith Kopit Levine, is ultimately responsible, at least in my opinion. Pro-Israel advocacy is not as well documented with Levine as with other media executives, though she is an alumna of B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. At least until 2020, Levine was serving on their Women's Leadership Initiative Advisory Council. B'nai B'rith is, among other things, a pro-Israel advocacy organization and a member of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, along with groups like AIPAC and the Zionist Organization of America. But perhaps the biggest conflict of interest can be seen in the Times Jerusalem correspondent, Isabel Kirshner. Her husband, Hirsch Goodman, was a fellow at the Israeli Institute for National Security Studies, one of the most prominent national security think tanks in the country.
Sorry about that. I do apologise. These things happen. I'm sorry if I hurt anyone's ears. That one. Oh God, they're everywhere. Fuck. I'm trying to think who's worse for it, the American government or ours. Probably the American government. That seems to be a lot of Israeli organisations. And I did notice the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which operates here as well, which is essentially a Zionist lobbying group. Because I love yous, I'll desperately do not use that word. I think I'm fine in saying it. I'm small enough that hopefully they'll not bother. But you lovely people are parts of other communities, and I wouldn't want to get them. It's already bad enough that we lost Kev for a week for something that got misconstrued or deliberately lied about by someone to make him lose his Twitch stream, his Twitch account. Delightful. Leave Kev the fuck alone. Thank you.
She reportedly relied heavily on the think tank while reporting for The Times. Her husband also served in the IDF during the 1967 war. Additionally, their 2 sons served in the Israeli army. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, and the paper has experienced a widely reported...
Interesting. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Jeff. How's it going?
...shift toward the Trump administration. Bezos personally intervened to muzzle the editorial board, keeping them from making an endorsement for a presidential candidate in the 2024 election, according to the Washington Post themselves. Since November 2023, the Post's chief executive has been William Lewis, who was formerly CEO of Dow Jones & Company and publisher of The Wall Street Journal. Though, as Al Jazeera columnist Andrew Mitrovica wrote in an opinion article, the paper has long been hawkish. Ages before Bezos bought the flailing Post, the English-speaking corporate outlets on both sides of the Atlantic have been faithful couriers to every foul aspect of the Israeli-American axis and its calamitous conduct throughout the Middle East and, of course, Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Indeed, in 2007, Chris Matthews of NBC's Hardball called the Post a neoconservative paper, evidenced by its vociferous support for the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003.
In the 6 months leading up to the invasion, the Washington Post would editorialize in favor of the war at least 27 times.
In August 2004, Howard Kurtz reported in the Post, from August 2002 through the March 19, 2003 launch of the war, the Post ran more than 140 front-page stories that focused heavily on administration rhetoric against Iraq. Moreover, an examination of the paper's coverage and interviews with more than a dozen of the editors and reporters involved shows that the Post published a number of pieces challenging the White House, but rarely on the front page. The paper was not front-paging stuff, said Pentagon correspondent Thomas Ricks. Administration assertions were on the front page. Things that challenged the administration were on A18 on Sunday or A24 on Monday. There was an attitude among editors, look, we're going to war. Why do we even worry about all this contrary stuff? The Washington Post's pro-Israel bias provoked controversy in November 2024 when their editorial board decried the International Criminal Court for issuing arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The editorial stated, inter alia, to be sure, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, but Hamas is to blame for sheltering among civilians. But Israel, as a democratic country that is committed to human rights,
But Israel, a democratic country that is committed to human rights, must take responsibility for the civilian casualty toll.
must take responsibility for the civilian casualty toll. These claims are complicated by the Post's own reporting. In April 2024, an analysis for the paper on the infamous Plus 972 expose on Israel's use of AI to generate targets reads, "It may have played a major role, particularly in the early stages of the current war, as Israel conducted relentless waves of airstrikes on the territory, flattening homes and whole neighborhoods. At present count, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 33,000 Palestinians, the majority being women and children, have been killed in the territory. Moreover, this may help explain the scale of destruction unleashed by Israel across Gaza as it seeks to punish Hamas, as well as the high casualty count. Earlier rounds of Israel-Hamas conflict saw the Israel Defense Forces go about a more protracted, human-driven process of selecting targets based on intelligence and other data. At a moment of profound Israeli anger and trauma in the wake of Hamas's October 7th attack, the AI targeting program Lavender could have helped Israeli commanders come up with a rapid, sweeping program of retribution. According to the Plus 972 report, Israeli officials showed little squeamishness about dropping bombs on the buildings where the targets' families slept. "We were not interested in killing Hamas operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in military activity," an intelligence officer told Plus 972 and Local Call. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation. As a first option, it's much easier to bomb a family's home. Plus 972 had previously reported that since October 7th, a separate AI targeting program was designed to destroy civilian infrastructure, which the Israeli military calls power targets. The bombing of power targets, according to intelligence sources who had first-hand experience with its application in Gaza in the past, is mainly intended to harm Palestinian civil society, to create a shock that, among other things, will reverberate powerfully and lead civilians to put pressure on Hamas, as one source put it. With the destruction of entire cities and most homes in the Strip, and the demolition of buildings and homes with bulldozers, the deaths of civilians can hardly be blamed on Hamas shielding behind civilians, and it would be no less than absurd to suggest as much. It is long overdue for the American media to talk within the realm of reality and not perpetuate these absurdities. On the ICC arrest warrants specifically, the Post bemoaned, "The ICC is putting the elected leaders of a democratic country with its own independent judiciary in the same category as dictators and authoritarians who kill with impunity." The Post actually responded to criticism of this article and defended their stance. To support their notion that Israel would surely investigate allegations of war crimes, they cited the 1982 Kahan Commission that investigated the Sabra and Shatila massacres, which led to the resignation of Defense Minister Ariel Sharon. Using this example shows a profound ignorance, willful or not, of Israeli society since 1982. The editorial states finally, "The ICC was established to investigate war crimes committed by member countries that have no means or mechanisms to investigate themselves. That is not the case for Israel." There was a helpful article from the Israeli Haaretz on Israel state institutions and their suitability for investigating Israeli officials. 3 days before the ICC's warrants announcement, Haaretz revealed that Israel's Attorney General decided not to investigate Israel's leaders on suspicion of incitement to war crimes. The prospects for Israel to self-regulate its conduct in the war via the Supreme Court do not look much better. In March, a number of Israeli human rights organizations, led by Gisha, an NGO focused on Gaza, petitioned the High Court of Justice to oblige the state to supply adequate humanitarian aid to Gaza. The proceedings have dragged on for 8 months. The petition has since been rejected outright. As far back as 2014, Israeli human rights group B'Tselem concluded, Israeli authorities have proven they cannot investigate suspected violations of international humanitarian law by Israel in the Gaza Strip. In their words,
Oh, we checked it. We studied. We looked into ourselves. We policed ourselves and said, no. These aren't human rights violations. We are the most moral army in the world, and the most democratic country in the Middle East or Western Asia, whatever one you like to use. I use both just to make myself just to cover. Yes, we investigated ourselves. And no, these aren't human rights abuses. Doesn't work like that. Shouldn't work like that. You don't get to investigate your own conduct. Someone else from the outside is meant to come in and police you or investigate. You don't investigate yourselves. Yes, we didn't break any rules. Delightful.
there is currently no official body in Israel capable of conducting independent investigations of suspected violations of international humanitarian law, including, most importantly, investigating senior political officials and military commanders. The overall policy guiding the military's actions is laid out by senior political officials. 8 human rights organizations, including B'Tselem, appealed to the Attorney General, urging him to investigate violations of international humanitarian law during the 2008 and 9 destruction of Gaza. The Attorney General's office declined less than a week after the operation ended and before a single investigation was launched. In February 2025, Jeff Bezos shared a memo to his employees on Twitter. "I'm writing to let you know about a change coming to our opinion pages. We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of 2 pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others." Shortly after, Bezos hired a correspondent from The Economist to be the Post's opinion editor, who said that the opinion section would be unapologetically patriotic.
"We want to use technology to improve our journalism while we host robust debates about the most important issues facing this country and the world. We're also going to be stalwart advocates of free markets and personal liberties."
This apparently also includes staunch support for the State of Israel. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching, and if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more content. Also, if you want to chat or talk about video ideas, become a patron to join the GDF Discord server.
I will play these 3 shorts until everyone gets fed up with me. They are awesome. Where are they? Go. The second one.
You're surrounded by a vampire, a werewolf, and a chain demon. This is it. The moment I've been waiting for. I cast Greater Polycule! Do you mean Greater Polymorph? I do not. No.
Sometimes life gives you lemons and you make lemonade. And sometimes life gives you Nazis. And you depose them before they form a radical death called ethno state. Have a glorious day.
What?
Oh God, I fucking love it. Fucking hell, 3 hours. Let's see. Okay, actually seeing this one. Red hits on it to show what James Cleverly plays. But this Trope Talk video. Oh, no. Trope Talk. Grimdark.
This video is sponsored by World Anvil, a bright spark of hope in an otherwise cold and uncaring world. The Dark Age of comics officially began in 1986, the year that saw both Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Alan Moore's Watchmen. Superhero comics had touched on dark themes before. Chris Claremont's God Loves, Man Kills, an X-Men comic that handled themes of religious zealotry and full-on genocide, came out in 1982, and Alan Moore's take on Swamp Thing, which is deeply grotesque and unsettling, also came out in the early 80s. But this is when comics started getting dark overall. The grittiness became the rule rather than the exception. There was a bit of an arms race, honestly. By the 90s, it almost felt like comic writers were trying to one-up each other in how dark, gory, and morally ambiguous they could make their heroes. This is the era that saw such developments as the characters of Cable, Lobo, Spawn, and John Constantine, and DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths, an attempt at rebooting the entire space of DC Comics that killed off hundreds of characters, most notably Supergirl and The Flash, and some say is still f***ing up canon to this very day. As the 90s rolled on, the comic book Dark Age kept on trucking. The stories got darker, the characters got meaner, and there was this oddly pervasive feeling of embarrassment with the previous eras of comic books. All those colorful spandex superhumans with wildly unrealistic power sets saving the day for truth and justice? How childish. How implausible. Now we had dark spandex superhumans killing people with their wildly unrealistic power sets for personal reasons. See, that's much more believable. Who needs to grow up now, Mom? This was the broad beginning of Grimdark, a space of stories that, true to the name, are grim and dark and nothing else. Grimdark is hard to solidly define, but before we try, we need to dive into the other major contributing factor to the genre, Warhammer 40k, a tabletop minis game first published in 1987. This game is the source of the term Grimdark. The game's tagline is, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war." And it's pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. It's the far future, everything sucks, and everybody's fighting all the time. There are no heroes.
I demand, listen to me, I demand, all of you go and follow Overly Sarcastic Productions. This is Red. They are amazing. They are asexual. I love them desperately. So this is a trope talk. This is about the tropes in media, essentially, and they really are quite good. Then you've got Blue, who's the historian half of this YouTube channel. They've been going for a while. Blue is amazing. I love Blue. He's a they he 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 is a really good historian. Red is awesome. They've done a comic book. I keep on meaning to go and try and buy it. It is fully online. You don't need to pay it if you don't want to, but I want a hard copy to go in our bookcases, which we still need to buy more of. We'll get round to them, don't you worry. In the minute we get all of our books back out of fucking boxes. And maybe with any luck I'll find a charger for my electric toothbrush. I don't know where the fuck it is. Once all the books are back out of boxes again and onto bookcases, I will take a photo and I will post it on the Discord so you can see our bookcases with books. Lots of books. I have a bookcase right here. It has all of my DVDs. I still have another 2 boxes. Oh, Raid Joy's comrades. It's the Morton is here. Hi, Morton. Morton is amazing. Hi. Welcome in. How's it going? Grimdark. Overly Sarcastic Productions. I'll go back a few minutes.
defined. But before we try, we need to dive into the other major contributing factor to the genre, Warhammer 40k, a tabletop minis game first published in 1987. This game is the source of the term grimdark. The game's tagline is, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war." And it's pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. It's the far future, everything sucks, and everybody's fighting all the time. There are no heroes, there's no happy ending, there is only war. So here's the quick rundown. In Warhammer 40k, you pick an army, you spend way too much money buying and painting the minis, and then you use them for tabletop war games with other people and their armies of minis. Most people play as the Imperium of Man, specifically the Space Marines, but if you'd expect them to be the good guys, you are sorely mistaken. In the lore of the game, the Imperium of Man is an authoritarian nightmare that worships the mummified husk of a god emperor who they keep running with daily blood sacrifices. It's got the propagandistic no free thought allowed vibe of 1984 with exactly none of the subtlety. And the other options aren't any better. There are really bad guys like the Forces of Chaos, demons from a parallel universe known as the Warp, where the psychic emanations of sentient beings from our universe produce twisted monomaniacal demons that rip through the fragile skin of reality to ravage our world. Fun stuff. They're in good company with the Tyranids, a massive psychic hive mind from another galaxy that is systematically using their massive xenomorph-style biomass of murder critters to chew through entire planets and appear to have the galaxy completely surrounded. I mean, between those two forces, everyone's pretty much boned already. The Tyranids are chewing through space, and the Forces of Chaos are punching big holes in it every time a psychic gets a headache. But it doesn't stop there. You can play as the Necrons, the last remnant of an ancient empire that tried to escape death and instead turned into Terminator space zombies. Or the Orcs, green-skinned space football hooligans who have literally no priorities besides war. Or you could do what I did and play the Eldar, gorgeous, elegant psychic space elves whose massive space empire was pretty awesome until they partied so hard it created a chaos god that shattered their empire and turned half of them into bondagey murder space pirates, leaving the rest wasting away on massive spaceships, recycling their souls into giant robots because there aren't enough of them to fight otherwise. Or maybe you want to play as the Tau, fresh-faced alien newcomers who are looking to build a pan-galactic space empire by subjugating all other races using mind control. Ah, beans, it's always something. There really is no winning. Warhammer 40k is kind of the platonic ideal of grimdark. There are literally no good options, and thanks to the infinite forces of chaos, there's really no winning. There's no heroes, no unified bad guy to target, no Death Star to destroy, there's just war, and plenty of it. And most likely thanks to the 1-2 punch of the comic book Dark Age and Warhammer 40k exploding onto the scene, their shared aesthetic of grimdark got mad popular starting in the 90s. This is also, not coincidentally, around when White Wolf started publishing their notoriously grim World of Darkness games. Now, since grimdark is more of a vibe than a genre, it's a little tricky to strictly define, but there's a few key factors that help narrow it down. See, lots of stories are gritty and dark without going full grimdark, which is a totally different ballgame, but it can be very easy to get them confused. For one thing, grimdark has no heroes. It can certainly have protagonists, but those protagonists aren't heroes. Their motivations are usually entirely self-centered and morally dubious, their methods are deeply unpleasant, they're typically quite self-destructive, and overall they're not what you'd think of as a good person. They can be very sympathetic and relatable, but they're not someone you'd look up to exactly. Heroes often represent ideals. Grimdark protagonists don't. There are plenty of gritty, dark protagonists who are full-on heroes with paragon ideals or a strong sense of justice, and those guys aren't grimdark. And when they get rewritten as grimdark, it feels weird. If you take a grimdark setting and put a hero in it, they don't fit. Either the world bends around them through the sheer force of their protagonistness and ungrimdarks the setting, or the grimdark wins and they die, usually very nastily. Grimdark and heroes can't coexist. This is a case where Warhammer 40k has kind of an advantage. For the most part, as a war game, individual characters don't matter. There are a few special units with names and backstories, and the lore has plenty of characters in it, but no matter how cool their alleged narrative accomplishments might be, when the game gets going, they usually die pretty quick anyway. However, there are some tie-in novels that put focus more on individual protagonists, and those novels tend to have a much less overwhelmingly gritty tone than the actual game lore does. The world is still a hot mess, but the characters do heroic things, and care about each other on a very deep level, and forge genuine lasting friendships, and other such hopeful things that don't normally feature in grimdark narratives. While the game is grimdark, it's hard to write a compelling story in that setting, so the books end up being not quite grimdark. Now, another key factor is that grimdark has no real hope for a happy ending. Some stories come with clean solutions: blow up the Death Star, destroy the artifact, defeat the evil emperor, put the one true king on the throne, return with the elixir, a simple goal that our heroes have to accomplish to win. Grimdark doesn't have that simple fix. If the world is unpleasant and broken, our protagonists have no simple way of improving it. Maybe the government is corrupt all the way up, or the deities themselves are evil, or the world is just boned in 1,000 different ways and fixing one won't do anything for the other 999. Saving the world isn't on the table. In absence of a clean solution, grimdark narratives can still have smaller scale victories on the table. Maybe our protagonists will never overthrow their authoritarian regime, but they can successfully dissuade small scale agents of that regime from messing with their little corner of the planet. Or your cosmic horror setting doesn't really give you the option of defeating the elder gods, but you can still outrun their cultists. Still, despite the small scale victories, grimdark makes sure our characters will have to deal with this pervasive unpleasantness basically forever. And the last staple of grimdark is gray and gray morality. Some stories have black and white morality, where the hero heroes are good, and therefore everything they do is good, and the villains are bad, and thus do only bad things. Most modern media avoids full-on black and white morality, and will allow their heroes to do questionable things and their villains to be a bit more nuanced and sympathetic, but it rarely dips into full-on gray and gray morality, where all the characters are working in a very murky area. In gray and gray morality, the righteousness of an action becomes irrelevant. Some other paradigm is in play. Maybe all that matters is survival, or revenge, or some other fundamentally self-centered goal. The morality of what the characters do in pursuit of that goal isn't a factor, or at least not one that matters to them. Pointing it out to them is pointless. Gee, Mr. Punisher, did you know that murder is wrong? Oh, golly, I hadn't considered that. Guess I'll leave my dead family unavenged. See, that's not the paradigm they're working under. Even if there is a grand-scale good versus evil conflict going on, these guys aren't invested in it. Now, one of the more interesting and frustrating things when discussing grimdark is this pervasive idea that grimdark is inherently more realistic than other genres. I talked about this way back when I did a trope talk on realism, so I'll try not to get too far off track, but the short of it is, grimdark was a bit of a direct reaction to the more light-hearted, optimistic stories of the pre-Dark Age. Those stories had heroes and happy endings, and grimdark said, that's dumb, and also for babies, check this out, and then started telling stories without those things. This ties into the general idea that optimism is naive, something you're supposed to grow out of, and pessimism is real, the state you grow into. And that's a load of hooey. Yeah, I said it. What are you gonna do, be sad at me about it? Optimism and pessimism are two sides of the same concept. One anticipates a good state of being, the other a bad one. Half full versus half empty. Ultimately, it's the state that matters, not what you expect it to be, so for the most part, optimism and pessimism are just personal attitudes and don't matter that much. But optimism and pessimism, when expanded into universalized concepts, produce two very different worldviews. The optimistic worldview believes that things can go well, that the world can be better. The pessimistic worldview believes that they can't and won't. And in this case, the optimists have it. The world can improve and has several times. Heroes have existed, and the world has been, on occasion, saved by them, or at least greatly improved. This is the concept highlighted by classic fantasy authors, like Tolkien. Grimdark is part of the counter-argument put forward in response to that by more jaded authors, like George R.R. Martin. Now, this counter-argument isn't all grimdark. At its most sophisticated, it's more of an attempt to humanize these otherwise mythologized heroes, to point out that the people who changed the world, even for the better, were still people, and thus probably at least kind of an asshole. Now, Tolkien and Martin are actually really good examples here, because for one thing, they both did a really good job presenting their worldview, and for another, they're really not as opposed as people seem to think. And here's the kicker, they both delved into realism. Yeah, really. While Game of Thrones is much more low fantasy and low magic than Lord of the Rings, neither author shied away from the realistic human element of their respective adventures. George R.R. Martin doesn't shy away from showing a character pooping themselves, but Tolkien also delved into some pretty intense psychological misery when he wrote Sam and Frodo struggling immensely to make their way through Mordor, tired and miserable and forgetting the taste of food. The scenario was fantastical, but the characters reacted in very realistic ways. And someone who fought in World War II would be pretty qualified to describe the malingering effects of dragging yourself through a war zone and forgetting what it felt like to be anywhere else. Plus, if you've ever read the Silmarillion, Tolkien's not exactly an idealist, and he certainly doesn't shy away from the gross stuff. There's plenty of incest and murder. I mean, he did base it on Norse mythology. The only real difference between these two is the framing of the world. Tolkien's fantasy world can be saved. Heroism and moral righteousness pay off, and the good guys save the day. Martin, not so much. Delving into court intrigue and political power plays mean a lot more assassinations and a lot less actual good getting done. Can this world be saved? I mean, probably, but not by any of these guys who are so caught up in their personal squabbles they literally can't agree if fighting the endless zombie death army is a good idea or not. In any other year, I'd have called that unrealistic. While Martin fits the grimdark aesthetic more, he's really not as steeped in it as some people think. And the idealist high fantasy he's pitted against has a lot more in common with his work than some people would like to admit. Now, there's one very interesting thing about grimdark. Since the no real happy endings rule is pretty definite, that kind of rules out most plot-driven storytelling. It's hard to get an audience invested in the outcome if it's guaranteed to be unpleasant. In light of that, most grimdark narratives end up being either character-driven or theme-driven. We can get invested in characters no matter how morally dubious they might be, and a lot of grimdark stories sell us completely on the character dynamics and convince us to root for an ending that
you can see it in fantasy. Obviously, the Game of Thrones books are a lot later than when Lord of the Rings was written, and a lot of books subsequent from like the late 50s onwards, basically through the 60s and 70s and the 80s and stuff. Don't get me wrong, you still had your sci-fi, your fantastical worlds and all that stuff. And fantasy did use certain things in Tolkien's narrative through those books, through like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. So he obviously massive fucking influence on future authors, future writers and stuff. Things that I have read. as a teenager and a young adult into my 40s, obviously. She is not correct when in another video she calls him a world-building juggernaut. He was. The man was a fucking genius in certain aspects in the writing of these books and literally shaped the way fantasy and sci-fantasy and science fiction got written in the late 50s, 60s and 70s. Seriously, some of the ones from the 60s and 70s, they're fucking mental. Like, really out there sci-fi and fantasy books. And a lot of it is based on European history and mythology. Obviously, it was his academic career was in as well. He really was quite a visionary. I'll give that for him. Yes, brilliant man, brilliant author, as always. So it shaped the way, and it shaped the way a lot of us, especially people like me, people like my super hubby, my true sister, well, my younger sister. She's more into like not Mills and Boone, but family drama, that side of it. But me and my other sister, we're fantasy and sci-fi essentially, and comic fantasy. I think Pratchett and Gaiman books, Mary Gentle, Weber, S.M. Stirling, people of that nature. That's who we read growing up as little girls and teenagers and stuff. What a really, really funny book that isn't Pratchett. Read Mary Gentle or oh dear God, that book is fucking hilarious. Like I say, a lot of our books, still in boxes, are absolutely amazing, especially in sci-fi. And Super Hubby also likes historical fiction. I think Flashman, the Bolitho books, Sharp books, books of that nature, and lots of other different types as well. And Stephen King's fantasy books, The Dark Tower, blah, blah, blah. That was my favourites. And you know, like The Stand, Pet Sematary, Needful Things, blah blah blah. God, that book, Needful Things, it's in a box. That is my book. I brought that book into this relationship. It's in a box. I can actually see it. I can see the box. It's sitting behind my Super Hubby's armchair. Hello, Needful Things. It will get out of a box, don't you worry. I am missing 7? I am missing 7 Discworld books. I will get them, don't you worry. But everything up until the most recent one that I don't have would be Unseen Academicals. But everything before that, I have them. All of them. Every last one still in a box. Or back in a box, because they were in a box before when we first moved into this flat, fucking 23 years ago. Oh my God. What date is it? 23 years ago. A week ago. Holy fuck. I've had these books for fucking decades. This is frightening to me.
Has no good impact on the world overall, but provides some kind of closure for the characters. The ending doesn't even really need to be that satisfying if it leaves us feeling the right kind of unpleasant. For instance, The Last of Us got the audience to root for Joel and Ellie to get along. From the beginning, we sympathize with Joel, but he still acts like a jerk. And we like Ellie, because, let's face it, she was handcrafted to be sassy and lovable. This causes us to root for Joel's character development to make him less of a jerk, because we want to see Ellie happy, and she's invested in him being nicer to her. And when Joel starts opening up, that lets us get invested in their dynamic and root for it to improve. Some grimdark goes even darker for the resolution. Various issues of Sin City successfully guide the audience to root for the protagonist to die. Yeah, it mostly works because the characters come across as very lost and purposeless except for their gritty determination to either murder somebody or protect somebody at all costs. They convince you over and over again that for these characters, dying after successfully doing their one thing is the only satisfying conclusion. How grim. and dark. And then there's theme-driven grimdark, where the characters are basically exemplary victims of the horribleness of the scenario they're stuck in. Grimdark themes often explore cosmic horror, hopelessness in the face of overwhelming force, the terrors of authoritarianism, and basically anything that boils down to this sucks and I can't do anything about it. These stories are ways to explore deeply unpleasant scenarios. Books like 1984 do so specifically as a political warning, and many post-apocalypses are similarly theme-driven to get across that, hey kids, destroying the world is probably bad. But you also get a certain amount of overlap, where a character-driven narrative still explores a central theme, like humanity or the loss of humanity, which is quite popular, or even something really specific, like how Mad Max Fury Road is about the pointlessness of searching for a perfect promised land instead of putting in the hard work to build the best life you can from what you have. But for all that, it can kind of be hard to see the appeal of grimdark. Like, for me, personally. I have pretty simple tastes. I like heroes and I like happy endings, and I don't really have that much patience for edgier-than-thou nihilism. I can understand the appeal of more nuanced stories with bittersweet endings or unconventional protagonists, but grimdark as a genre kinda strips away everything that I personally like about stories and storytelling. It's hard for me to get invested. I want characters I can root for playing out arcs that I want to see resolved. For the longest time, I didn't get the appeal at all. And then I watched Chicago. Now I'm gonna be clear, Chicago does not fit the grimdark aesthetic. It's a dang movie musical. It's all glitz and glamour and all that jazz. But there are no heroes. Every single protagonist is a terrible human being. There's no interest in morality. The protagonists are all murderers trying to avoid legal consequences for their actions, and the lawyer helping them do it. And the outcome that you're theoretically rooting for is a total miscarriage of justice. And there's really no hope for a happy ending, because it's clear from minute one that the protagonist Roxy kinda sucks and really can't make it in showbiz like she wants, and that what she's mistaken for her fame is just her 10 minutes in the spotlight because of the murder she did. There's no one to root for, and there's no happy ending. I should have been clicking back over to Dragon Ball Z 10 minutes in, but I didn't. And it took me a little while to figure out why. It's because the characters were well written and inherently compelling, and while none of them were headed for a happy ending, some of them were heading for karmically satisfying ones. Watching these terrible people from a third-person omniscient perspective lets you really appreciate how terrible they are, and then you get to watch their dreams die as they crash and burn. It's oddly satisfying, like a story without heroes that still lets you watch a villain get their third act comeuppance. Now that's one reason grimdark can be appealing, but it's not the only reason. I asked Twitter for some thoughts on the appeals and pitfalls of grimdark and found a few recurring themes in the answers. One of those themes is catharsis by proxy. When a character we relate to on any level goes through something emotionally intense, we, the audience, feel it from a distance. Catharsis, the process of releasing very strong or repressed emotions, can feel very freeing or satisfying, even if the emotions involved are miserable or exhausting. So a character in a grimdark narrative going through the absolute emotional ringer can provide the audience with a feeling of catharsis without having to go through the actual bad stuff. Of course, this isn't unique to grimdark. Any story can do it, even one as quote-unquote idealistic as Lord of the Rings or as child-friendly and simplistic as any shonen anime. But it is an appeal, and it shouldn't be discounted. Now, the other common theme I found was perspective. A character in a grimdark narrative goes through a lot. If the audience compares the character's experience to their own life, instead of relating to that character and feeling for that character, they might end up feeling a sense of relief. Like, hey, things are lousy, but at least I didn't just get stabbed by my own dudes or bitten by zombies. It's like the relief of waking up from a nightmare. The nightmare sucked and you don't want to do it again, but realizing it's not real can be very soothing. A whole lot of things you were worrying about suddenly don't matter anymore. Now, while this can work, it only really works if the audience doesn't care about the character. Audiences can get very invested, and it doesn't necessarily matter if their own life is really comfortable if their favorite fictional character is having a really bad time. They might go better them than me, or they might send the author death threats. It is interesting to note, by the way, that both perspective and catharsis by proxy only work if they're a form of negative escapism. People who actually deal with very upsetting stuff on a daily basis, like grief counselors, people struggling with personal trauma, etc., often actively avoid all things grimdark and favor much more lighthearted, optimistic media. If grimdark is like a cold
I get put through the ringer psychologically and physically and emotionally because of my health issues. I appreciate some grim dark every now and again. Don't get me wrong. I like mythology, for crying out loud, and history. And history is replete with grim dark situations that have actually happened in history here in our country and in the world, the great world through history, obviously. I can connect to it because I go through the ringer every day because of my health. It's kind of weird. My sisters used to look at me and say, "Why do you like this sort of stuff? You go through enough with your own health and your disability. Why do you like some dark media at times, especially horror movies?" I enjoy them. I can see the people going through the ringer in these movies and relate to it because I go through that every day. It's easy for me to do that. I am kind of odd, don't get me wrong. And that's one of the things that my sisters used to point out to me. I get it now, because I've been like this for forever. Don't get me wrong, I like light-hearted, happy media. I like shonen anime. I like Disney movies. I'm not really a big fan of rom-coms, which is odd. I like more horror and action type movies. I've noticed. So if anyone wants to ask me any questions about what I go through and see if it can actually help you, feel free. Carry on. I'm here to help. I'm here to educate. This is actually quite a good video to actually help people relate to the darkness in their own lives. It does help. It really does. Any questions whatsoever, feel free. I'm genuinely honest here. I'm here to help everyone. My family, my sisters, my mum, my 2 nephews and nieces, they reach out. Well, Niblet. Sorry, sweetie. They reach out to me and ask me stuff to help them get through their situations as well. And I'm here for that. I love helping people, obviously. It's always been in my nature.
Cold shower, a quick bout of misery to energize you for the rest of the day, then you can see why it wouldn't seem too appealing for someone who spends the rest of their day in the emotional equivalent of an ice bath. There was also an interesting answer I noticed where some people suggested that seeing characters struggle even in the face of utter hopelessness was encouraging. And I'm gonna be honest, that one doesn't make any sense to me, because Grimdark prides itself on screwing over those exact characters. If you want to see persistence in the face of hopelessness be rewarded, you can look to any other genre of fiction. Grimdark is pretty much the only one that'll swat you in the face with a wet towel and call you a dork for believing the universe would ever reward a heroic effort. And if it doesn't do that, it's not Grimdark. I guess the bottom line is, Grimdark has appeal. I mean, obviously, enough people like it that it has to be doing something. Even though it's precision crafted to be generally unpleasant and miserable, it really does work for some people, and sometimes you're in the mood for a little catharsis by proxy. But it works best in moderation, and it's definitely not the be-all end-all pinnacle of fiction. It has its place, but so does the stuff it's a reaction against. Grimdark can be aggressively nihilistic, but the purpose of fiction is, in many cases, to inspire. And nihilism generally doesn't do that. In his 1993 essay, Let There Be Dragons, acclaimed Discworld author and all-around excellent dude Sir Terry Pratchett said something that I personally think is unimaginably beautiful and incidentally also describes 100% of my thoughts on Grimdark. The quote goes like this: "Why does the third of the 3 brothers, who shares his food with the old woman in the wood, go on to become the king of the country? Why does Bond manage to disarm the nuclear bomb a few seconds before it goes off, rather than, as it were, a few seconds afterwards? Because a universe where that did not happen would be a dark and hostile place. Let there be goblin hordes, let there be terrible environmental threats, let there be giant mutated slugs if you really must, but let there also be hope. It may be a grim, thin hope, an Arthurian sword at sunset, but let us know that we do not live in vain." Hope is the ultimate motivator. On some level, it's the only motivator. If it seems like I have personal beef with Grimdark as a genre, it's only the same beef I have with everything that treats hope like a dumb, childish concept rather than the fundamental core of human experience. Hope makes us believe things can be better. Once we stop believing that, we stop trying to make things better. And guess what? Then things don't get better. Pessimistic nihilism is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy, and maybe it's the 2020 talking, but man, I have straight up run out of patience with people who give up on a better world and then have the audacity to tell other people that they're naive or stupid for still trying. The Grimdark worldview preaches that everything sucks and nothing will make it better. If the ideal of the Grimdark genre is really struggle in the face of hopelessness, then act like it. Dare to believe the world can be better and fight for it. And if that's really the ideal of Grimdark, then why does every other genre do a better job of inspiring it? Grimdark can totally be fun, but man, don't let it define your worldview. So, yeah. And thanks to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. By now you're probably aware that World Anvil is a browser-based world-building and novel-writing software designed to help writers organize their writing and world-building all in one place. It's got the essentials like plot and story timelines, custom wikis for more info on the events in those plot and story timelines, interactive world maps of all stripes, family trees to keep track of your characters, and more recently, fully customizable calendars with tools for holidays, lunar cycles, and basically everything you'd want to fill a year with. There's also a fun little feature that helps you keep track of diplomatic relationships and diagram how well certain organizations get along with each each other. I just think it's neat. They also recently gave their word processor a design overhaul to make it more streamlined and easier to use. World Anvil is also constantly being upgraded with cool new features, so by the time you get it, there could be all kinds of cool new stuff. Truly a shining beacon of hope in these dark and uncertain times. If that sounds neat, the cool part is the base features are all free, and if you want the bonus frills, you can get 20% off all 6 and 12-month memberships with the promo code Overly Sarcastic.
That was quite good. I enjoyed that. Now let's go into an act of terrorism. That'll be fun. King David. What else? Number. Nope. Nope.
אבא שלי היה גאה. מאוד כל חייו בפעולת מלון המלך דוד. אבא שלי, דוד יעקבי, פיקד על חוליית הסבלים שהם נשאו את קטעי חלב ובהם חומר נפץ והטמינו במלון המלך דוד, שהיה בימים ההם המפקדה הראשית של הבריטים בארץ ישראל. הרגו באותה פעולה כ-91 בני אדם, יהודים, ערבים ובריטים. רק כשבועיים לפני מותו, הבן זוג שלי שאל אותו אם יש משהו בחיים שלו שהוא מתחרט עליו. ואז פתאום הוא אמר, הייתי מבקש עוד רבע שעה. לרבע שעה נוספת, לו רק הייתה עוד רבע שעה, להתראה שהם נתנו לבריטים לפנות את המלון, אולי כל אותם 91 בני אדם לא היו נהרגים.
That moment that I knew it's going to be very dangerous, people are going to get killed. If they won't listen to the warning, leave the place, there is a bomb.
Never use them, never. There were always battles between armed men and armed forces. Israel.
May 1945. Hitler is dead. World War II is over. 6 million Jews have been murdered by the Nazis. The survivors leave the camps and struggle to make their way home. But where is home?
היהודים נרדפו גם באירופה וגם במדינות ערב. ליהודים לא היה בית, והיהודים נרצחו, והיהודים נטבחו, והיהודים גורשו, והיהודים נהרגו. וזה היה לחיות או לחדול. זה היה או חיסול העם היהודי, אל מול לכונן בית יהודי בארץ ישראל.
In 1922, the League of Nations grants the British a mandate to create a Jewish national home in Palestine. Protecting the rights of Jews and Arabs soon proves to be an impossible task. Violent skirmishes break out between Jews and Arabs.
אבא שלי היה אידיאליסט. הוא חשב שרעיון החירות, על החירות הלאומית, הוא אידיאל שחייבים לשאוף אליו וחייבים להגיע אליו בכל מחיר. הייתה תחושה של לעולם לא עוד. לא יטבחו ביהודים ולא ישחטו את היהודים. הוא היה מוכן להקריב את נפשו, הוא והחברים שלו היו מוכנים למות למען האידיאל והרעיון של החירות.
Arab-Jewish tensions mount. The British are increasingly forced to intervene. Pressures intensify when vast numbers of Jews flee to Israel from Europe. Jewish organizations transport Jewish refugees to Palestine, but the British refuse them entry. Arriving at port after their harrowing journey, the migrants are told to go back. This infuriates the militant Jewish resistance movement Irgun, which resorts to a tried and tested remedy: terror.
I was only a little boy when we had a visit from the second in command of the Irgun. He was in Ireland for the purpose of meeting with the senior officers of the IRA to study their methods of attacking the British as they did then, and they imitated many of their tactics. My father believed that the only way the Jewish people could survive as a people was by having their own state, by re-establishing the state of Israel. And he believed that this could only be done by force of arms, that the only thing the British understood was force of arms. They had never given a country its independence by diplomacy or being talking nice to them. The King David Hotel was the headquarters virtually of the British officers. They all assembled in the King David Hotel. That was their club, the residence of many of them. It was a legitimate target. And Irgun did warn them that they were going to destroy it. I don't know how factual it is that there were many Jews in it, but I don't think there were that many. And if there were, well, they were enjoying themselves having gin and tonics with the Brits.
The stylish King David Hotel serves as the headquarters of the British in Palestine. The entire 5th floor has been requisitioned by the army. Local staff are employed to provide administrative assistance.
My father was promoted to some job in the administration, in the center office of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, helping with the British administration. I was 3 years old and my brother was 1 month and 2 days.
There is a file from the Jewish resistance movement ordering to execute or to carry out as soon as possible operation of the Malonchik. It's a code name for the King David Hotel. עליכם לבצע בהקדם האפשרי את המלונצ'יק ואת הבית של עבדך משיחך. הודיעונו על המועד. מוטב בבת אחת. אין לפרסם את הזהות של הגוף המבצע, לא פרסום במפורש ואף לא ברמיזה. And in paragraph 6 it's written, for God's sake, not personal terror.
זהו, הם התחפשו לערבים, פיקד על חוליית הסבלים שהם נשאו את קטעי חלב ובהם חומר נפץ והטמינו במלון המלך דוד. הכניסו את הקדים אל האגף הדרומי.
The telephone exchange is set up in the basement. It's manned by 6 women working for the ATS, the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Their commander is alerted by the noise. He and a fellow officer investigate the goings-on and catch the intruders.
באיזשהו שלב, לא הבינו מי הם, אבל התחיל ירי, ירו עליהם. אחד מהפורצים נהרג, גל שמו. הם נשו על נפשם. במקביל, לחברות ארגון הצבאי לאומי הזהירו את הבריטים. הם נתנו להם אזהרה של כרבע שעה.
The girl who had to run from one place to another to make a telephone call, it was not that easy. She had to ask permission in a certain shop to make a telephone call. Maybe she started her mission 30 minutes earlier. But until she called, she made the actual calls, it took time. And then the calls reached the hotel much later.
והציעו להם לפנות את המלון. הבריטים לא פינו את המלון, בין אם הם לא הספיקו, כי זה לא היה מספיק זמן. ובין אם הם לא האמינו, הם לא שערו בנפשם שיצליחו לחדור למפקדה הכי ראשית והכי לעומק.
Holy fuck.
זהו, וכל האגף הדרומי קרס.
The station collapsed completely.
וזהו, זה היה בעצם מגה פיגוע עם מספר.
It was a major, excuse me, it was a major attack, one of the biggest terror attacks of all time. Correct.
מספר ההרוגים והנפגעים הכי גדול לאורך הרבה שנים בעולם כולו.
With the highest number of deaths and injuries, so with the highest number of casualties. Delightful. These people are fucking terrorists. Never forget it.
"65 deaths are reported, and there is little or no hope of survival for any of the 58 missing. Nearly 50 others were injured. The Jewish terrorist organization, Irgun Tzvai Leumi, openly admitted responsibility for the bombing. Many arrests have been made. Leaders of the Jewish agency have expressed horror at the dastardly crime perpetrated by a gang of desperados. Mr. Attlee in the House of Commons declared, the British government will not be diverted by acts of violence in their search for a just and final solution of the Palestine problem.
My father was killed at the bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. The Irgun never admitted that there was such a short time for informing the hotel, though they say there were at least 30 minutes. It's absolutely not true.
Oh, total lie. Complete and utter
The
lie.
paramilitary organization Irgun, founded by the Russian Jew Zev Jabotinsky, claims responsibility for the attack.
We have a Hamashkif daily newspaper from the 22nd of July 1946 telling about the bombing of the King David Hotel. 41 הרוגים ו-52 נעדרים בפיצוץ משרדי הממשלה בירושלים. מספר הפצועים 53.
התקופה הזו של הפיצוץ במלון המלך דוד היה חלק מתוך תקופה של המאבק בשליט הבריטי, שמנע מאיתנו להקים כאן מדינה, התמודדות עם הערבים והטרור הערבי, ומתוך התקופה הזו היה גם האירוע הזה שהוא אחד, הוא אירוע מאוד קשה, הוא אירוע מאוד משמעותי, שלא הייתה בו כוונה גם להרוג אזרחים, אבל הוא אירוע אחד מתוך תקופה שצריך לבחון אותה לעומק ולהבין את ההקשרים, ואני כילד התחנכתי על התקופה, לאו דווקא על האירוע הזה.
Jabotinsky believes that mass immigration of Jews to Palestine is the only way to establish a free Jewish state. He is also convinced that this plan can only be achieved through armed resistance.
This picture was taken in Warsaw in 1935 in a meeting of the leaders of the revisionist movement in Poland. Here you see Zev Jabotinsky, the leader of the revisionist movement, Menachem Begin, and David Stern, my father, who was one of the leaders of Beitar youth movement in Poland.
הסיפור של הגדוד היהודי הראשון הוא הסיפור של זאב ז'בוטינסקי הפרקטי, שבא ומחבר בין החזון להקים את מדינת ישראל בארץ ישראל, לבין ההבנה שכדי להקים את החזון, לממש את החזון הזה, רבים בארץ לא יודעים מי היה זאב ז'בוטינסקי, אבל הם חושבים שהם יודעים מי היה זאב ז'בוטינסקי. ובאים ומתייגים אותו ומצמידים לו כותרות בלי לדעת. למשל, באים ואומרים שז'בוטינסקי היה פשיסט קיצוני. אבל לא בדיוק מבינים מה הייתה תורת קיר הברזל שעליה הוא דיבר. באים וטוענים שהוא היה שונא ערבים, אבל אם אתה בא וקורא את קיר הברזל, ז'בוטינסקי מבהיר בקיר הברזל, לא שונא ערבים אני, אבל חשוב לי שקודם כל תהיה כאן מדינה יהודית, שבה יכירו הערבים, ואז נוכל לכונן שלום.
My father met with Jabotinsky in London. Jabotinsky recruited my father to go to America to raise funding. And my father went to America using all his connections with the Irish out there whom he had dealings with during Ireland's fight for independence.
It's from your dad. That's the letter from the Department of
all right.
Justice outlining why they won't give permission to Jews to come in.
Yeah, if we, as the Jewish people, didn't do something to save themselves, no one else was going to. How often did I tell American Jews when speaking to them in America that if they did not make up their minds quickly, the problem would be solved by extermination.
My father was very, very young. He was like 16 when he joined the Irgun. He came from a very Orthodox religious family, so he put aside his Bible and he took up a rifle, so to speak. He had tremendous admiration for Jabotinsky. He adored Jabotinsky. He very much agreed with Jabotinsky's kind of sentiment and his worldview and his political kind of outlook. My father rose in the ranks very rapidly, and in 1937, he was sent to Europe to facilitate in bringing illegal immigration of Jews from Europe to Palestine. My father kind of shuttled back and forth between Poland, primarily Geneva, London, and Paris, and that's where his relationship with Jabotinsky developed. And in 1939, after the Nazis invaded Poland, Jabotinsky came to the conclusion that the only place to be now was in America and to work with American Jewry, and so he asked my father to accompany him. My father had no problem calling people and going up to people and asking them, famous people, people with status, to support his cause. And he had a lot of chutzpah. They staged two very, very elaborate pageants. One of them was called We Will Never Die, and this was in 1943, and it focused on the extermination of the Jews.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is the scene of one of the nation's most spectacular pageants, titled We Will Never Die. This mammoth memorial is dedicated to the 2 million civilian Jewish dead of Europe. The cast includes 1,000 volunteer actors and actresses, written by Ben Hecht as a living testimonial.
And the second one was A Flag is Born, and it focused on the struggle for independence in Palestine. He accumulated an incredibly talented group of people around him. I mean, he had Ben Hecht, they had Stella Adler, and they would have Paul Mooney, and they had Marlon Brando, and they had like very, very big names, kind of Hollywood names, who volunteered, basically, who kind of gave of their time and of their talent as part of the cause.
We sold out. We had to pay tickets, even though everybody was a volunteer, but still it costs a lot of money, a thing like this. 2 weeks before the evening, every single of 22,000 tickets was sold, and we decided to chance it. You know, we felt that there is a surge of interest, and we issued an announcement that the thing will be an hour earlier, and we made another one at 10:30 in the evening, and the police wouldn't give us a permit. They says there's never been so many people there on a non-sporting event. Of course, we overcame them, and they gave us. We filled Madison Square Garden twice in the same night, and this was early 43, January, February 43. And who were we? Unknown people. I mean, we used big names, but it wasn't the names who pulled them.
Hillel Cook has more than enough chutzpah. He not only gains the support of Hollywood stars, but also mobilizes influential senators, first to save Jews from the clutches of the Nazis, and later to finance the emergence of a free Jewish state.
One day my sister told me that she had a job, and it was passing out a basket at a play called A Flag is Born. She asked me if I was interested, and I was thrilled to be given the opportunity. It was after the play was over, Luther Adler came forward and spoke to the audience about why they were going to raise money and to help the Zionist cause. He said, now these volunteers will pass baskets through the audience, and we would put a basket on one side of a row, and then it would come back filled with dollar bills. People who went to the theater and who went to see A Flag is Born were well dressed and they looked like conventional theater goers. I didn't count the money that we had raised. It wasn't one of those things where you waved the basket afterwards and said, hey, I got $500 and you only got $100. We felt we were in the presence of something very important because we thought if the State of Israel was born, we would have contributed something to help make it happen. And the audience were, for the most part, I think, extremely sympathetic to the message and happy to pony up. Where the money literally went, did it go to the more militant Irgun or did it go to the Haganah? And I remember one of the older folks there assured me that it went to the more radical cause, but I didn't know that at the time.
The Irgun was a hierarchical organization. I mean, it fancied itself a kind of paramilitary organization, so hierarchy and status was very significant. And my father was probably amongst the higher ranking members of the Irgun, and so therefore he was significant in determining or deciding who would be the head of the Irgun in Palestine. And the person who was chosen to be the head of the Irgun was Begin. I don't think that Begin was his choice, but he authorized the choice.
Oh, God. Ow. I think I'm going to have to read out. I have enough energy left in me to actually go over to someone else's channel and say, hi, I'm here. But carry on my own. I'm struggling a bit here. Let's see who's live. Soup's going. That girl, taking up. Yeah. Red Roast's going. Oh, fuck. You've got a minute. Let's go and say hi to Red Rust. He is doing Rocksmith. Yay. Catch you later, Jim. Thank you as always. Always good to have one of my best mods here. You and Shanna are the stars of this channel. Thank you. Do we have Christy? I can't remember. We'll look out. I'm sure it's Kevin Christie today at some point. Yes, it's the back of Woking Hill. Oh, there he's there. Thank you for being here, Jim. Pleasure as always. For anything you'd want me to cover in the health sphere, I'm going to make it Medical Monday again for obvious reasons. It's about time I actually concentrate on that. So, hey, type. Oh, bring it. I do apologise for my use of comrade and will figure it out. I'll see if I can borrow either Lauren. I will ask around and see if I can stop doing that, you nutter. Oh. Okay. Stay hydrated, not necessarily with alcohol. Take your meds. Stay based and I'll catch you soon.